Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. How's it going? Happy Friday. We are live on the channel. We're here on March 28th, 2025, doing live solar eclipse readings. We are actually on the eve of the final solar eclipse in the sign of Aries. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, like this video, share it out, let people know that we are here, we're live. And these are always so wild. So you guys are probably going to hear some stories this evening. Thank you guys for joining me. If this is the first time that you have come to visit my channel, what's up? I'm Candace. I'm here every Friday. We alternate between Fridays between tarot and astrology. Like last week was tarot, and we are back with astrology readings. Just a couple things right off the bat. If you see at the bottom of the scroll of the screen, I have all of the people who have already gotten in the queue. If you see your name, that means I got your payment, I got your question, I have your chart, and I'm ready to give you some answers. But also, readings are closed. So you got to be fast if you guys want to get in these live readings, especially when we have lunar or solar eclipses. So everybody say hi in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. So I guess it goes without being said, if you're watching this on Saturday or Sunday or even Monday, we're no longer live. We were live on Friday. So if you get excited and if you send payment, I'm going to send it back to you with a love note saying, I hope I see you next week. Equally, for those of you guys who are wanting to get a reading and you didn't get in, you can come back on another Friday. Next week will be tarot. The week after that will be astrology. But I'm always here doing readings, or you can book a reading with me. Click the links below in the description. Head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. I am booking in July and August of this year. So if you know you have a birthday coming up in the summer or in the fall, I highly recommend booking your reading or catch me on another Friday. So this is last call for level 3 people. I have memberships on my channel. So if you guys didn't know, I'm a full-time content creator. I create 4 videos a week. Trying to create even more if that's physically possible, but we do long format, in-depth astrological readings. We look at what's going on with the collective. We combine it with the Sabian symbols, Western astrology, as well as tarot. I've got lots of different videos and stuff throughout the week. So please subscribe, click the bell button below so you can follow along. And I hope you guys like my content. And if you want to support me as a full-time content creator, honestly, the best thing you could do is subscribe to the channel. Leave me comments, give me thumbs up, share my stuff on your socials because that helps my channel grow. We just recently hit 40,000 subscribers. We hope to keep going. And if you join my memberships, you get on level 3 a reading with me once a month. So you'll be able to kind of get in. You don't have to wait in line. We take level 3 members first and you can get 1 tarot or astrology reading per month with me. So that's kind of cool. But there's other levels too. If you just want to support me or if you want to get a shout out, definitely check that out on my YouTube community tab. We're always posting stuff there and letting you guys know what's happening. Also, follow me on X. I'm the most active on X at BTV Astro. You guys can also find me at Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astro on Instagram. But I'm pretty much mostly active on X. So you guys can see some of my astrology posts. I'm always posting about stuff that's going on. So we will be taking our level 3 people first. So if you are La Morena, Ripples, Emma, or Salty Mama, you guys are going to be first. And then we've got about a bunch of other people. So Cynthia, Nicole, Briana, TR, Roy, Estella, Zach, Julie, Carly, Danielle, Robin, Amanda, Fiorella, Alyssa, and Tara. So these are usually pretty long. We'll probably be here for a couple hours. I appreciate your patience. I understand not everybody can wait. So for whatever reason, if you can't wait, you can always come back. Just scroll through when the video is no longer live. You can actually scroll through until you see your name on the top corner of the chart. I always put the name so you guys can go back and look at your reading. It will be there. You can leave comments. You can even come back in the future and kind of see how some of these readings play out for you. And this is fun because it kind of gives you a little bit of like insight what a session with me would be like. During the astrology readings, I answer one question, all right? So I know sometimes you guys are like, I want to know about this, 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 and this. So I might talk about what I think is most prominent. And if you're in the chat, I can always read your question and then I can ask you, okay, which one do you want? But for the sake of time and also just to make sure that everybody gets a reading during these lives, I answer one question. So I appreciate your patience. I know we've got lots of people here. There's lots of new people. I noticed we have a lot of new people getting readings, which is kind of cool. So if you're new, thanks for joining. But it looks like we have La Morena here. She will be first. What's up, Nikki? Empress Energy is here. What's up, Miss V? Stella, Salty Mama. Kendra's here. Maybe, are you Robin? The only person's info I did not get was Robin. So I'm not sure if that's you or not, but just if you can confirm, let me know. Tara is getting a question. Emma's here. What's up, Emma? What's up, Artemis? Rain, Kaja, Sarah, Rosie's here. You're welcome, Rosie. What's up, Sonia? Hey, Jacob. Stella, Astrology for Mystics. Dorothy, Matt. Oh my God, it's full. What's up, Jeggy? Yeah, usually once I hit 20 people, I'm like, my brain's gonna fry. So I appreciate you. For those of you guys who got in there early, we always try to post it first thing in the morning on Friday. So if you guys know you want readings in the future, just check the community tab on Friday morning. Once the link is up for the video, you can send the payment, and in the memo in the PayPal, just send me your birth details and your question, and hopefully I can catch some of you guys next time. All right, so the other question that I have is other than Robin. So Robin, if you're here and if you can confirm your birth information, let me know. What else? Oh, Tonga. I got an email from you, but I did not get a payment. So if you want to send payment, let me know, but I do not have a payment for your reading request, and I don't see you on my memberships. So just let me know. Yeah, this weekend's astrology is bananas. It is. It's the next couple of days is going to be a lot. Sometimes people just want to come and hang out. So if you guys just want to hang out and watch these readings, you're more than welcome to. Obviously, it's a great way to learn. And you'll kind of see the back and forth that I have with some of the people that I'm doing readings for and some of the techniques. If you guys want to learn how to read astrology, if you want to learn how to read your natal chart, if you understand what the aspects and the placements mean, how to kind of interpret a natal chart, check out my Astro 101. It's over 18 hours of pre-recorded lessons. I have homework. There's all kinds of stuff that takes you through teaching you how to read your natal chart. And I have a level 2 Astro 201 where I teach you guys how to work with transits, how to look at progressions, solar and lunar returns, synastry stuff. I have synastry courses too on the astrology of you and me. So you guys can learn this stuff too, but you guys can also just watch along. So get comfy, grab a snack, maybe something to drink. I think a lot of us are going to need it. And we're going to get started with La Morena. So Morena, Ripples, and Emma, you guys are all on deck. And when you hear your name, that means that your reading is coming up. It's just to let you know, hey, pay attention. We're getting ready to take a look at your chart, because sometimes there's going to be a little back and forth discourse that you might have with me while we go through the reading. What's up, Deanna? All right, so La Morena, she popped in right at the top of the chat. I've got her here January 11th, 89. She is a Gemini rising, moon in Pisces, sun in Capricorn. And she said, hi, Candace, I'd like my monthly reading. What do I need to know about the next time? What can I expect? All right, well, let's talk about what's kind of most active in your chart. For those of you guys who don't have a specific question, you're going to hear me talk about the solar eclipse, which is coming up tomorrow morning. You're also going to hear me talk a little bit about maybe your chart ruler, if there's some stuff going on with your chart ruler. So as a Gemini rising, something to kind of think about is really all the way up until closer to like mid-April, your chart ruler is retrograde, right? Mercury. So you're dealing with Mercury that is backtracking and going through Pisces, which is very much connected to your professional image, your goals, your reputation, your work, where you're working, how you're working, maybe even your role at work or your relationship with bosses or employers or superiors. This is a house that deals with responsibility, okay? And it's retrograding back from the 11th house, which is about your goals. So I feel like of all the signs right now, I mean, collectively we're all getting kind of impacted by the Mercury and the Venus retrograde, but Gemini risings, yeah, they're kind of being brought to task because it's all happening 10 signs away from you. So this is kind of karmic. It's in regards to, some lesson in maturity and responsibility and just who you are out in the world. So the fact that you're experiencing this retrograde and it's going side by side with Venus, it's a lot of like, do I love what I'm doing? Am I on the right path professionally? Am I resonating with who I am out in the world? And, you know, it's very karmic because it's meeting with Saturn, and Saturn in your chart deals with your beliefs, changes with resources, joint resources, as well as just professional changes in general. Saturn's the ruler of your 8th house. So that's going to kind of continue as we get into April, and you'll feel that kind of play out over the next couple of weeks until Mercury goes direct. The positive is that it's making aspects to Mars in your 2nd. So it is kind of saying it's giving you more incentive now to go, I want to make more money. I want to feel good about what I'm doing. I want to feel incentivized and emotionally connected to my finances. And maybe that means that there is some incentive for you to go, well, because of Cancer things, maybe new home goals, living situation goals, also things revolving around just self-esteem coming back online now that Mars is direct. So this is good. The only way to get out of some of the squares that we're feeling during the eclipses and, you know, all the stuff that's kind of going on with the moon and Chiron and all that stuff is to lean into the Mars trine Saturn, Venus, North Node, Neptune. I talk about this a lot in my Astro Weather on Sunday. My thought on this is that there can be a need to network and kind of connect and collaborate with other people, or maybe you're wanting to meet with other entrepreneurs with Aries in the 11th, or friends or social groups, or maybe it's just incentivizing you to focus on working with team members, right? That's one way that I could interpret this. Reconnections with friends, goals changing as well. The solar eclipse, though, that's taking place is going to be happening in Aries. So when we look at that, let's look at the eclipse. There we go. So it'll be first thing tomorrow morning, depending on what time zone you're in. I'm in Central Time, so very early in the morning, we're going to have the new moon solar eclipse. All right, positive is that solar eclipses are like, okay, ready, set, let's go. So we're setting new intentions about what new things we're initiating, Aries. So this would be a wonderful time to like join a group, initiate a group. It could be a time where you're going and joining like group fitness classes. It could be a time where there's a lot more social opportunities. The only real issue is that just because you have a solar eclipse as a Gemini rising does not mean it's going to impact you the same as it will another person. This is where you have to look at your natal placements and kind of go, okay, what's happening? One thing that kind of catches my eye that's positive, and this is a positive eclipse. It's at a 9. It's about growth and self-exploration. The solar eclipse is sextiling your Mercury, which is the ruler of your chart. So it's basically saying, all right, we're getting her ready to travel, learn, maybe connect with new teachers, trainers, people who are going to share some kind of information or some new philosophy with you. So that's positive. However, there are some challenging aspects that are being made as well. Probably the most challenging is that you got all these planets in Capricorn. And as a Capricorn, you're going to hear, okay, Capricorn, solar eclipse in Aries, you know, something's happening with your family or your home, or you got to move, or you're figuring out where you want to go. And you may see some of that, but I feel like the solar eclipse squaring all of your Capricorn in the 11th and also your Chiron in the 1st is saying that it's trying to get you out of old patterns and habits, Capricorn, Saturn, old ways, when it comes to how you've been in relationships. It can also mean that you're prioritizing platonic relationships over romantic relationships. It can also mean that there are some challenges maybe in changes that are going on in terms of psychological shifts with those eclipses squaring your whole sign 8th house Capricorn. Where there's changes with your friends and that's impacting you somehow emotionally or psychologically. And it can also be impacting you financially because this is squaring your 8th and your 2nd house whole sign. So I think of this as like where other friends or actions and social dynamics can be positively building you up, or there's changes that are going on there, reconnections, reassessments, you know, miscommunications, especially when it comes to like travel or finances that can kind of create some uncomfortable situations. But I would lean into the sextile to Mercury. It might produce opportunities for you to learn, for you to travel and connect with new people. And I feel like Gemini risings are supposed to be opening up to being more spontaneous, more than usual in this next year, because this eclipse wants you to get out there, make a new friend, start new groups. It's also going to be, you know, slightly coming into a sextile with Jupiter in your 12th. So it could be about spiritual exploration, travel, you know, there's shifts that are going on for you subconsciously, which is kind of opening the door to like getting out there and mixing and mingling with like new groups. right? So all of that stuff seems to be like positively aspecting your chart, but obviously because you got a lot of Capricorn, I feel like it's probably going to be about friends from the past or things going on with connecting to social groups from the past and whether or not like it feels the same emotionally connecting with some of these people. You know, you've been through, I mean, everybody has been through at this point 2 years of eclipses in Aries. So if you go back to spring of 2024, spring of 2023, we had a solar eclipse at 19 degrees last spring, and then we had a solar eclipse at 29 degrees in the spring of 2023. So you've had eclipses that have been closer to your Mars in the past, and I feel like it's both like an uptick in socializing, but also it seems to be about changes with your goals, with friends, health, or scheduling. And you might want to reflect on what's happened over the last 2 years while you saw these eclipses and what kind of took place for you. Hopefully that's helpful and gives you some insight. Thanks for being a member. All right, we got Ripples. Ripples, I saw you join level 3. I did not see a question for you, but I have your chart here, February 20th, 75 at 4:59 a.m. So are you here, Ripples? What's up, Victoria? Yes, it's usually with the eclipses, things get kind of crazy. So sorry I missed you. There you are. Did you have a specific question for me or did you have a question about the eclipse? Capricorn rising, sun in Pisces, moon in Gemini. My question is in the email. Well, let me see if I can find it. Hold on. What I know this is a silly question, but was that for Tonga? Because I did not see another email come in, so I'm going to assume, was that you? Sorry, sometimes people have different names on YouTube versus their emails. Okay, got it. All right, I was like, wait, is that the same person? All right, so yes, I do have your question. So I'll take you off of my list and put you on the other list. Okay, so for Tonga, she said, I'd like to look at my Aries solar eclipse and how it can support or challenge my upcoming, I'm planning to leave next weekend, temporary move to Guadalajara. I've been unsuccessful in finding housing in Phoenix where I live since February 1st. I've been staying in Airbnbs and it hasn't allowed me to save. All right, well, let's take a look. Let's see. Sounds like Capricorn rising stuff, honestly, with like the solar eclipse and the stuff that's going on. So as many of you guys know, when I do these live readings, the charts might look a little different, right? So that's because I'm using Placidus housing system. So when I create my videos, I'm creating the videos from the perspective of whole sign to make it more easily relatable to people who only know their rising sign. They don't necessarily know their degree. So when I see a chart like hers, where she's got a late degree rising, you know, Saturn is the ruler, Capricorn rising, so we always have to know where is Saturn, what's going on. But this may resonate with a lot of the transits that are going to be more for Aquarius or Aquarius rising, because look, she's 28 degrees in 34 minutes, so she's almost an Aquarius rising. So you can listen to both. Certainly the horoscope for Capricorn risings are pretty colorful right now, right? So you've got like Saturn coming into Aries, which is 4th house from your ascendant, which could represent a new beginning for your home. You've got Neptune that's about to be there, you know, over the weekend. So that's kind of like, where is home? Where am I going? And then you've got 2 retrograde, Mercury and Venus in a solar eclipse. So yeah, this is definitely pretty eventful. So the reason why I put that out there is because when we look at some of the stuff that's going on, the solar eclipse, the retrogrades, all that stuff, it's not actually happening in Tonga's 4th house, right? Which, you know, home living situation. All of this stuff, because she's got all of these retrogrades and also the ingresses and the eclipses are actually happening in her 2nd house. This is why I'm a fan of Placidus. It's quite literally her situation. If you were to see this based off of the perspective of whole sign, okay, Saturn rules Aquarius 2nd house, you could make the argument Saturn going into the 4th house is, you know, where is home? Neptune's there, trying to figure out money. But I actually feel like it's pretty accurate with the Placidus chart. The fact of the matter is that the solar eclipse is going to be in your 2nd house, which basically means this is like an all hands on deck situation where you're like, okay, I need to figure out my financial situation. There needs to be something that has to happen here. And it can mean that through the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde, you know, you've been reevaluating, well, how much money am I spending if I'm staying in temporary spaces or I'm renting places? Does it make sense to rework or rethink where I could potentially live for a period of time to get the finances in order, to make it possible for me to then figure out where I'm going to land down the road, right? All new moons become full moons in 6 months' time. Same thing with solar eclipses. It'll become a full moon in 6 months' time. So we look at what's happening with your fourth house ruler, not even so much the eclipse. Well, the fourth house ruler is obviously Venus. Venus is retrograde conjunct the North Node and Neptune with Saturn, which means you are learning how to be more, I think, conservative with your spending. You're willing to make a sacrifice. Certainly Pisces can represent a foreign land, especially as Venus is dancing with Saturn here. And this is also sextiling Uranus. So it might feel like it's a spontaneous thing. You might feel like it's like the rug is being pulled up from underneath you. But I definitely feel like this is maybe a good move, even if it's something that you're going to be doing temporarily. At the same time, you know, you have Venus retrograding back to Saturn. I have said for Capricorn and Aquarius risings that this is actually a good transit. You're going to find a way to save money, make money, bring more in, be more resourceful, have better self-esteem, that kind of stuff. And Saturn is coming into a conjunction with Jupiter, which is also whole sign 12 foreign lands. You're getting a hold of your financial goals. And then you've got Saturn coming into conjunction with Venus at a 26. I feel like being conservative now while Saturn is conjunct your Venus and your Jupiter is a smart move, especially knowing 6 months from now when we get into eclipse season in the fall, when we have a Pisces lunar eclipse, which will be in your second house of money, it's going to actually trine Jupiter. So you might go, wow, okay, I was able to move, you know, I was able to kind of get some work done, save some money. And now you're going to be rethinking 6 months down the road where you're going to actually be. What is the solar eclipse doing for you? That's positive, right? Because I'm all about making lemonade. I don't want to just look at a solar eclipse that's making some harsh aspects or there's some harsh retrogrades and go like, oh yeah, it's, you know, this isn't going to work. No, there's some things that's actually benefiting you. The solar eclipse is sextiling your south node. So you're willing to kind of give up one living situation, keeping an open mind with that south node in Gemini, and Jupiter on your moon is saying, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else. You might meet somebody in the process, by the way, because the fifth house is about romance. You also see that this solar eclipse is in a sextile to both Pluto, that's transiting your sign in the first house, and also your Mercury at a 9. It's an exact sextile to your Mercury. It's like, let's be adventurous. Let's keep an open mind. Let's go somewhere new. Let's do something creative. So the way to work with this, I feel like, and I have been saying this really since I think February. I was telling everybody, guys, we're going to have this solar eclipse, but before it comes in at the end of March, Mercury and Venus are going to retrograde, which means we have to reevaluate our goals, our values, our money, and then we will be able to make a bigger change down the road. 6 months from now, when we have a full moon in Aries, next year, by the way, which now I'm just starting to kind of scream from the rooftops, we're going to have a Saturn-Mars conjunction. The Saturn-Mars conjunction is going to be at 8 degrees of Aries, and that's going to be in April of next year. Now, you might look at this and go, okay, so what? What does it matter? Well, next year when you have Saturn, Neptune, Mars, Mercury all in Aries, we're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. Like, we're going to have to be willing to be more nomadic. Aries is nomadic. We're going to have to be willing to take risks or take chances. Some of us may have to move, especially knowing that Saturn and Jupiter are going to square. Individuals are going to go where they feel like they're going to be the most safe. So I think it's a good move. I would much rather you kind of rip off the bandage and do it now and make the sacrifices now versus waiting a year, draining your resources, being stressed out, not feeling like you have as much money saved for what could be a much more comfortable living situation. Sure, you make, the sacrifice now, but it could end up actually being really beneficial. And for all we know, Saturn and Neptune going into Aries for you as a Capricorn rising, it might mean that you're like, actually, I really like it here and I don't want to come home. It could be that. So I think it's a good move. You will have Saturn retrograde over your Venus. So like it will come back, and that's going to be a time to really reassess, okay, where am I at now financially? So this is going to be like September, October in 6 months. How do I feel? Do I feel good about this? Do I want to stay here? Do I want to, maybe go back? So I would be really reassessing my resources in October of this year. But by the time that happens, you know, usually Saturn retrograde over Venus is going to give you a more stable financial and home situation. And it's also trining Jupiter. So you might be in a relationship, you might have more clients. And it's also going to be making trines to a bunch of planets going through your 10th house. I think work is going to be banging, right? I think you're going to be really busy. And many of us are going to have to readjust our vision for the future with Saturn and Neptune and Aries in order to kind of get into a much more comfortable home family living situation. That's the square to Jupiter. I say do it. You know, I think it'll be fun, especially with Jupiter on your moon. It gives you the perspective that's like, I can live here and I can live there. And I feel like Gemini moons, they can do that better than most people. They can be flexible and kind of go back and forth between two places. And you may be really pleased with just how much more financially strong you are at the end of the year, and you'll feel like you can kind of make some more kind of committed decisions about your home situation. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Certainly it's just, man, like right now I can see Mars is in opposition to Mars in your chart, so you're kind of like, where am I going? And the eclipse is going to square your Saturn, so it is going to put a brief maybe pause on some of your schedules or some situations revolving around some of your clients, but you'll get reestablished once you kind of get settled somewhere, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Good luck with the move. Enjoy. Let me know what happens. All right, we have Emma. Emma got in there. March 18th, 76. Let's take a look. So Emma says, hey Candace, want to cash in. My question is, things are very turbulent for me at the moment, family and work stuff. When will this calm down, or do I need to strap myself in more? Thanks. All right. So, another Cap rising. I feel like we're going to see a lot of, like the first 10 degrees of cardinal signs tonight. That's what you're going to see, because they're all kind of getting lit up right now with the squares. So, ruled by Saturn. Okay. Oops, where's my marker? Ruled by Saturn. Come on. Do you still have my screen? I think I pushed a button I shouldn't have pushed. Sorry. Capricorn rising, sun in Pisces, moon in Scorpio. So she's got the eclipse that's going to be in her 4th house. That's also where the retrograde is. That's also going to be where, Saturn and Neptune are still moving through the 4th house. So that represents basically the challenges that's going on more on the home and family front. So when you're like, yeah, there's family stuff going on. Yes, for all Capricorn risings, this is a all hands on deck with what's going on at home situation. I'm not going to say that it can't impact work. You have stuff impacting work for other reasons. But Saturn hovering around your sun, Neptune still hovering around your sun, all these retrogrades over your sun is bringing up your whole sign 8th house. Change, transformation, ego issues with men in the family. So it can be brothers, partners, fathers, stepdads, bosses. Issues with men will come up when you see those solar transits. The other reason why I think this is a bit turbulent is because the eclipse, if you see your Pluto is at 10, this is at 9. So the eclipse is actually in opposition to your Pluto, and oppositions are relational. So I want you to go back in time, and everybody else can do this too. You want to think about what was happening in the fall last year. I think it was September. It was either September or October, but we had a solar eclipse in Libra. The solar eclipse was right around 10, 11 degrees. So you had a solar eclipse here, which was about planting new seeds, revolving around your work, your career, you know, who you're relating or partnering to out in the world. It could have been partnerships with people like your bosses in your job, but the South Node was there. So there was something coming up that's like, all right, well, there's going to be some kind of change that's going to be happening, you know, with my relationship to bosses, superiors, or my job. So now you have a solar eclipse right in opposition to that. So now it's not as much about work, believe it or not. Now it's much more about how am I feeling emotionally? Where am I living? What's going on with my family? Is there some kind of emotional shift that's going on that's making it challenging for me to like really be present out in the world, work-wise, right? And that North Node is conjunct your sun as well. So I'm wondering, like, who is it? You know, 4th house could be a parent, could be a spouse, could be, you know, like another male relative, an uncle, a brother. But the most important thing I think right now is what's going on with your home. And I'm not one to be like, oh, things are going to get worse, but I am going to be honest with you when I see some of the other transits that are happening. The fact that all these planets are retrograding over your sun is in preparation for Saturn to hit your sun. And Saturn represents your chart. So you are Saturn. So when Saturn goes into the 4th house, we go back home, we visit older relatives, we have a change in our living situation. We have to kind of figure out how to, complete something. The 4th house is ends of situations as well. So as much as I hate to say it, it's kind of not unusual when you see a Saturn sun transit here that's like, you have a father figure or a male figure that's having a health problem, or, they're getting older and they're needing help moving, or maybe there's something that's kind of going on with like a landlord. There's something happening here where it's like you're being called, and because it's karmic, Saturn, to kind of deal with the situation. Even your sun is at a 28. So I bring this up because it's all happening before Saturn hits your sun, which is going to be happening going into May. Okay, so it first starts coming into conjunction in May, and then you're going to see, as you get into the summer, you get a little bit of a reprieve, and then in the fall, Saturn's going to come back. So in your own life, it could mean, do I need to go home and help family? Do I need to move? Is there something going on where it's kind of pulling me away from that opposition to your Pluto to be more prioritizing what's happening with your private life? And does it create some challenges at work? Possibly. Mercury actually rules your career according to your Placidus chart. So with the North Node coming up on Mercury and also the North Node coming up on Venus, this strikes me as like a situation where you might be doing some remote work in the 3rd house, or some commuting, or there's a need to kind of communicate with bosses and people at work and like let them know what's kind of going down, and that you may potentially, need flexibility or understanding, and that you're trying to navigate what can be some challenging things, either emotionally or just, in terms of your family life. And that will come up to kind of be finalized for you in October and November. And then at the beginning of 2026, it'll finally kind of move on. There's other things going on in your chart though. It's not just, all this energy is in your 4th house. Pluto's squaring your moon, which brings up lots of power struggles, power plays, issues with moves, relocations, women in the family, mother figures, stepmoms, and the moon represents dealing with conflict, And here comes Saturn and Neptune squaring your Mars. I really feel like Mars on the descendant, you will see some like passive aggressiveness, or like kind of, women being kind of like hysterical or being kind of combative, and you're like, just let me help you, because you're the one who's got the superior square to Mars. So it can mean that you do receive some support, especially from like, you'd be surprised, friends, you might even have some family members that are going to go to bat for you and be like, okay, how do we handle this situation? Or maybe you're having to confront certain people and be like, this is what I can and cannot do. But this is going to be a process of something that you're going to be kind of working through. So you might want to go back and think about what happened the last 2 springs when we had solar eclipses in like March, April-ish in 2023 and 2024. You might even want to go further back and think about what was happening in the mid-90s. The last time Saturn was in this part of your chart, did you have a big move? Did you move from one city to another? Was there something that happened with one of your parents, or perhaps even with one of your grandparents? Because obviously the squares to your 7th house can be, grandparents and stuff. I don't think it's necessarily going to get worse. I do think that this is preparing you and kind of showing you, look, if you feel like you have been overburdened, or there's been some kind of family curse, or if you feel like the black sheep of the family, or that there's always like this reoccurring problem, the North Node Saturn on your sun is saying now is the time to make the changes. And with the sun being in the ruler of the 9th house, it could mean that it's also with like in-laws. It could also mean that this is connecting to legal matters and home and family situations, traveling or long distance relocations. These things can also come up as well. And I would assume by the time you're getting into, later this year, when you're starting to have eclipses then that are going to be coming through in Pisces, it's going to be a lot easier to manage because planets will be trining Jupiter in your 7th. So communication can be better. Relationships with family members can be better. You would have kind of worked through some of the crisis, and you're going to be like, okay, now we have figured it out. So it's not like completely landing on me, right? But in the meantime, I definitely feel like Capricorn risings are getting hit with some gnarly family karma. And karma is neither good nor bad. It's just neutral. You know, I have Saturn and Neptune natally in my 4th house. I would not wish a Saturn-Neptune 4th house transit on anyone. Because you see, it's just suddenly, it's like if it's not a foundation or a flooding issue, then it's like a mom that's hysterical or somebody who's got dementia, or there's something going on where it's just like you're constantly having to take care of other people and trying to figure out where home is. So you got to be really mindful of your emotional boundaries and like just how much you're willing to kind of take on, you know? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful for you, Emma. I hope things get better. Definitely zen den your space out. I would be really focusing on how you can kind of create a peaceful space in your home and be figuring out how you can either better communicate with extended relatives or family of any kind so you can come up with a solution, because it's all trining Mars in the 7th. Some people need to be confronted, is what it looks like, about just realistically whether or not they're checked in and if they're actually listening to you, right? Keep me updated. Let me know what happens. All right, so we got Salty Mama. She is the last of my level 3. Are there any other level 3 people here that I may have missed? We got retrograde, so I gotta ask. What's up, Kobe? Cap rising, taking care of grandma. See, guys, that's what I'm talking about. When Saturn went back into my 4th house, it was like my uncle died, I had to go, literally the day Saturn went back into my 4th house with Neptune, I went to go and visit my grandma at a nursing home. It's like crazy. So it's, yeah, very, very real. Lots of wisdom from Saturn. Saturn is the older relatives, you know? All right, so let's take a look. So Salty Mama, let's see what she says. Hey girl, I want to cash in tonight. Put me at the end of the members if possible. Just give me a general reading with whatever jumps out to you is important. All right, well, another one of the people that I think will benefit from the Venus transits, it may not feel like it, but because Venus is retrograding back into conjunction with Saturn, it's supposed to be bringing you something, right? Bringing you access to other people's resources, money, changes with transformation to relationships, changes also when it comes to home and communication, all right? So it is yes, it is a tough transit. I can see that. But I do think that probably the biggest theme in your chart that, I mean, just pops out to me just off the bat isn't even so much like the eclipse or any of the retrogrades. It's actually the fact that you've got the South Node that's been conjunct Pluto. So there's a lot of detoxing, deprogramming, clearing out, you know, recognizing and realizing what's not working, what's not healthy. And that could be like detoxing, that could be unhealthy habits, that could be where there's toxicity coming up in relationships and partners, or even like with clients or one-on-one relationships in your 7th. Uranus is square your North and your South node right now. I remember that transit. I had that transit pretty much the last 2 years. So that tells me that with your Aquarius rising, you're having to embody that Aquarian energy, which a lot of people is like, woo, it's fun, it's partying, it's this, it's that. Not necessarily. Sometimes you're just like fit to be tied with Uranus energy. Sometimes it means that you can't sit still. It means that you can't stay in the house. You're constantly moving. There's change that's going on where you're in and out of the house, or that you want to move here and then you want to change this, or you're rearranging furniture, you know. So when your chart ruler is making hard aspects in your chart, you pay attention. And Uranus and Taurus, it is going through your 3rd house. So, okay, I saw what you said. You quit smoking. That's great. That could be very much connected to the 3rd house of, you know, the lungs and pleasure and anything revolving around breathing. And also, you know, incorporating Taurus. So that could be like grounding techniques, crystals. It could be, you know, smoking herbal cigarettes even, or incorporating aromatherapy or frequency work, something to help you through that process. But it does bring up a lot of emotional volatility still. Uranus is actually getting ready to finally kind of perfect that square. And then it's going to move on. So you're going to see it move into Gemini, and it's going to kind of ease up a little bit. It'll come back briefly. You'll see that next year, or actually later this year going into next year, but it's not going to be as challenging as it has been. The other thing that catches my eye is just that the eclipse is very close to your Chiron. I mean, it's within about 4 degrees. So, you know, Mercury's gone retrograde over your Chiron. Venus has gone retrograde over your Chiron. You finished your Chiron return. Now we have a solar eclipse in the second. So it can mean that there's this sense where you're like learning to build healthier self-esteem, healthier habits with money. Maybe it means that you're going to be journaling because it's your whole sign third house. You're focusing on writing, communication, media. You're going to learn something new. This is all connected to Mars, and Mars is in your sixth. So this might be a really great time to start like a walking routine or a jogging routine, or maybe you're going to start something where you're biking or you're cycling, something to kind of break up some of this energy. And it's also really good for productivity. So it's like making to-do lists, making sure that you're checking them off, you're getting it done, and also making sure that you're keeping your physical and your emotional health in balance. Like that's part of this as well. But that solar eclipse is interesting because I think that for a lot of people who have planets around that degree, it's the preparation before Saturn comes fully into Aries next year. So your, you know, traditional ruler is Saturn. So I look at the solar eclipse and I'm like, all right, so she's practicing, you know, affirmations. She's getting more active. She quit smoking. Maybe she's going to be learning something new about health and wellness, and it's all in preparation for Saturn to come into conjunction with this degree next year. Saturn on your Chiron, and then you're going to see Mars go through there. It's like the end of March, you know, going through April is going to be like the real test, and it could be financial test, self-esteem. I think it's more about self-love because your Chiron's at a 5. It can be about healing things kind of connected to your childhood and insecurities and things that can kind of be popping up when it comes to like romantic connections and vulnerability and romance, because that's what 5s are about as well. And I was writing on X today, and I was talking all about like what's going to happen with this eclipse, and that we're kind of like outgrowing things. We kind of have to move on to a next phase, because if we don't do that, if we're not willing to grow, it's actually going to be impacting us in a way that can actually hurt us or harm us or create illness or sickness down the road. So for a lot of people, when these conjunctions happen next year, Mars, Saturn, Mercury, it's going to be like having to, you know, quit something or cut something off, or having to be active, or having to be more mobile, you know. So it makes sense to kind of start getting fit, or I think really kind of locked in on what direction we're going in now, because it's not going to be fun doing it next year. A lot of people are going to have a lot of issues. Taking a moon goddess training course, I love it. It's a year long. Yep, abandonment issues can very much be Chiron, but you know, the eclipse conjunct Chiron is sextile Pluto in your sign. So that's not a bad thing. Where is it? So many eclipses. There we go. It's sextiling Pluto. So I love this for like doing like goddess work, or anything that's going to be kind of behind the scenes, or if you're doing some kind of healing stuff and learning how to kind of like reinvest in yourself, and that you might be taking that course as part of you being like, I'm investing in me, and also working on intuition. And Pluto in the 12th can be very much like secret initiations and learning more about kind of like karmic matters and secret teachings and that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I would say get a bike, start walking, or hiking even with Saturn going into the whole sign third, or join a walking club, or start one, start journaling, start creating to-do lists about things that you need to get done, or things you need to get in order, or skills that you need to develop. That's actually what I would start doing, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you in giving you some insight. It looks like you're already kind of planning to do the healing work, and to be honest with you, it's a great time when the South Node hits Pluto, because you're ready to just kind of like flush a bunch of stuff away, you know? It's a stretch for you. You're almost have imposter syndrome. No, I mean, the sextiles to Pluto in your 12th is about kind of like releasing like an old identity and like shedding some skin and getting ready to come into something new. Right? And with Uranus square the North and the South Node, your intuition is telling you it's time to make a change. But it's like, whether it's at home, emotionally, you know, with some of your physical experiences, and also this is like very earthly. So it's wanting you to kind of connect to something that's going to help you stay grounded. So some grounding exercises, but also ritual and anything kind of connected with earth, plants, herbs, crystals, that stuff is like really helpful. Hope that's helpful for you, Marcia. Keep me updated. All right, so we're going to move to the Q. So thank you guys for staying with me, for being patient. If you haven't already given me a thumbs up, please like the stream. You guys can share it out too. I'm going to be taking Cynthia, Nicole, and Briana. So you guys are all going to be next. All right, so let's go and find Cynthia. Scorpio rising, sun in Capricorn, and the moon is in Sagittarius. Let me pull up my PayPal here so I can read your question. All right, all right. So for Cynthia, there it is. All right, it just says, reading. Did you have a particular question for me, or do you want me to talk about what's going on with the solar eclipse? Let's see, is there anybody else who didn't let me know what they want to know? So Nicole, I don't have a question for you. Briana, I don't have a question for you. If you guys don't have a question specifically, then I will take a look at the eclipse. So Nicole, Briana, and Taylor, or I guess I should say TR, sorry. So Cynthia, Nicole, and Briana, can you guys let me know your question? I want to know about my love life. Is that you, Cynthia? I'm not sure. Okay, so Empress is Briana. Got it. Danya, are you Cynthia? I'm not seeing a Danya on here. So you might have a different name. I'm not sure. You're going to have to let me know. No. Okay. All right. All right. So Cynthia, we've got Nicole and Briana, and you just want to know about the eclipse and the nodal return. All right. Well, we're going to do solar eclipse readings for Cynthia, Nicole, and Briana, unless I hear different. So Cynthia, let's take a look at this eclipse. So I have you here, Scorpio rising, sun in Capricorn, moon in Sag, and the solar eclipse is going to be in your 6th house. Wow, right on your Mars. This is a good time to be getting your reading. I don't know if you feel it or if you just kind of knew, but as a Scorpio rising, you know, Mars and Pluto rule your chart. So it depends on which system you follow. Obviously, for traditional kind of like Hellenistic, Mars is going to be your ruler. So what is Mars? You are Mars, right? So I really feel like looking at this, it's basically saying you get a restart, right? Your Mars is in Aries, so it's at home. You have a malefic Mars in the 6th house, which actually does pretty well in the 6th house. This basically means that you're at least ready for the challenge. Like you're ready to make the necessary, take the necessary steps, and also like really assess what needs to be fixed. Like the 6th house is, do I need to go to the gym? Do I need to see the doctor? Do I need to get organized? Do I need to be productive? Do I need a to-do list? Do I need to go to the gym? Like, and Mars likes to have stuff to work on, likes to have stuff to cut through. And your Mars is at 12 degrees. So it's both emotionally as well as spiritually. Like, what do I need to work through? So quite literally, you'll hear for Scorpio risings, all right, well, you know, solar eclipse in your 6th, new opportunity for health habits or routines to change. It means that you might get a new job, change jobs, your schedule might shift. You might see that within the weeks revolving around the eclipse or within 6 months. Saturn is coming into this house. Neptune is coming into this house. I mean, it's like work, 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 and more work. But if you have Mars at a 12, you can work to a point where you're overdoing it and you can have exhaustion. It also means that you have to work towards something that you feel like gives you purpose. It has to be something you believe in, or like you have to have a cause worth fighting for, or people that you feel like are worth kind of serving or helping. Now, this eclipse is ruled by Mars, and transit Mars is in Cancer. So Mars in the 9th house means that, you know, these new opportunities in terms of your schedule, your work, your health, or routine might mean that you work with a teacher. It might mean that you're traveling for work. It might mean that you have to take a certification or some kind of training exercise. It also means that this is going to be broadening your horizons in terms of what you believe. As a Scorpio rising, Mars started its retrograde in your 10th house, which means you've been reassessing your career. Maybe you're deciding, you know what, I'm going to make time to find a new job or do something part-time, or I'm going to, you know, go and get a certification or train so I can go in a new direction if that's something that you decide you want to do. Where this is a little tricky is it's going to be squaring your sun. So for a Capricorn, it might mean that there's changes to your home and your work schedule. Maybe you're reorganizing your home space. Maybe you have to create a home office. Maybe it means that you're having to organize your home, or there's like a lot of emotional kind of maintenance that you're kind of working on. I think what's positive about this is that you have a decent amount of fire in your chart, and obviously fire is active and dynamic. So when you have a solar eclipse in the 6th house where your goal is to be busy or to be healthier or, you know, to be more productive, that trine to Uranus is saying, yes, I can change my relationship with my career, my work, or my reputation. I'm willing to kind of welcome this change. It might be exciting and fun. It's also trining your Venus, Saturn, and your moon. These are all financial kind of work-esque houses, where the 2nd house is money and values and self-esteem. The 6th house is routine and actually putting in the work, and the 10th house is getting the recognition. I have speculated for some time that for a lot of my Scorpio risings, if you guys want to feel better, you have to create a schedule for yourself that works. And whether that's work-wise or diet or fitness-wise, you know, what have you, this is a good solar eclipse to set that intention. Yes, Mercury is still retrograde here. Yes, Venus is still retrograde here, but it's going into your 5th. So it's saying, you know, if you want to start a side hustle, a hobby, a new business, you know, it's giving you the freedom to do that if you decide to do it, something that you enjoy more. Equally, this is about making time for dating, romance, relationships, you know, and reassessing whether or not you're giving somebody enough time or working on a relationship with an existing kind of coworker. I have had Saturn and Neptune in my 6th house. I have been all over routine, being really crazy about it, because I know later this year, Jupiter's going to go into my 10th house and it's going to trine. And it means that the more organized and healthier and on top of things I am, the more benefits I'm going to get professionally, the more growth I'm going to see in my career, you know, also the more comfortable I'm going to kind of feel doing what I'm doing. So I would give that advice to a Scorpio rising, knowing that next year Jupiter will go into your 10th house and you can have a pretty significant career glow up. It's all about what dedication and, you know, kind of like what passion and, you know, consistency you're willing to kind of put into some of your routines. And I feel like, thankfully, you have a number of things where there's nice trines and outlets to this. So hold yourself accountable for some of the new changes with your health, your wellness, your fitness, your work. And if you do that, you're going to see within 6 months' time, you can actually really see some positive shifts. I've heard a lot of my Scorpio risings have been telling me they're having allergies, migraines, headaches, inflammation, sinus issues. You know, this is all very much like Aries. It's like the face and inflammation. So certainly solar eclipses in the 6th, pay attention for health-related stuff. Stuff can kind of pop up. So can scheduling changes, you know. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Cynthia. All right, we've got Nicole, and then we have Briana and TR. What's up, Nicole? All right, so we are going to be taking a look at this solar eclipse in Aries for you. Yet another Capricorn rising. I had a feeling there's going to be a lot of them. So taking a look at this eclipse that's kind of coming up for you, obviously as a Capricorn rising, pretty significant because it's kind of bang on square your ascendant and your descendant, and it's also opposing your Pluto. Whoa. So this is technically, it is creating a grand cardinal cross in your chart, right? Very close to Jupiter though, so that's beneficial. So, you know, solar eclipse in the 3rd house, Placidus, it's not in the 4th. So this is going to be more about new opportunities when it comes to the mind, what you're learning, communication. It can mean that it's opening the door to like new websites, new social media, communications with neighbors, as well as like with siblings. And it's a little uncomfortable. When you see an eclipse on an angle or squaring the angles, that new beginning is pressing on everything else in your chart. So it's challenging you when it comes to your resilience and your patience and your persistence, Capricorn rising. It's challenging relationships with others, Cancer, and it's also challenging relationships with people out in the world professionally or committed relationships. Certainly with Pluto being there, there's this feeling of like, I'm getting pulled between two different directions. You know, there's what I've always prioritized, and I can see with like Pluto, you know, in your 10th and a lot of planets at the top part of the horizon. It's very external. This is a very external chart. But now you've got all these heavy hitting planets that are going the bottom part of your chart. So it's like, this is very much about, well, how am I changing? Who am I? What do I value? What do I think? Do I like where I'm living? What's going on with my family? You know, and all of these things are very kind of like private, kind of beneath the surface. So the positive is that you're a Sag and you've got your sun in 9 degrees and you've got your Mercury and your Neptune at 11 degrees. So this eclipse in the 3rd house is wonderful for affirmations, journaling, writing things down, speaking things into existence, reaffirming, I am capable, I am strong, I am doing this, even if it's not stuff that you're doing yet. Because it's going to blend very nicely with your sun and your moon, which is your identity, your emotions. It's also trining your Neptune and your Mercury. I mean, that's like literally saying the things that you write down are like spells, you know, and you can like enchant things and be like, this is what I see coming. This is what I want. Boom. And it can help you build that. And it can be traveling more, learning more, bringing in, you know, a potential move. Maybe you're feeling more inspired in how you're writing and communicating and expressing yourself to other people. And it's very close to your Jupiter, which is positive. Jupiter wants to bring you abundance, right? It's harder for you to work with Jupiter aspects and transits because Jupiter rules Pisces and it's intercepted in your 2nd. So it tells me that you're finding your voice in ways that you did not know that you could. Or maybe you're speaking up for yourself or communicating with family or relatives in a way that might feel like it's more assertive than what you're used to doing, or it's like a little bit more like direct, or it's more about, well, this is what I think, or this is what I feel, you know? A little difficult. Certainly there's been some relational stuff going on. You know, you've had Mars going back and forth over your Saturn. So it's something about a relationship with another person. Now it can be a relationship to a spouse. It can be a relationship to money. It's at a 2, a relationship to children, romantic partners, younger people. And it's obvious to me that you're changing, you're evolving. Pluto's in your 1st house, opposing your Saturn, where you're like, I'm no longer the person that I used to be, and I want to show up differently in relationships. And when you change, sometimes other people don't like that because the dynamic changes and it doesn't benefit them anymore. So there is this sense of you really needing to learn to lean into the sextile to Pluto, where you're like, yes, I'm changing, therefore the way I communicate or how I'm living or how I respond to family or emotions is different. But you can approach this in a very optimistic manner with an eclipse very close to your Jupiter. I do feel like you can feel like it's time to finally put an end to old standing family issues, right? And I think more than anything, it's going to be about how you communicate with family. I don't think there has to be a falling out. Certainly a lot of Capricorn and Capricorn risings are going to be, you know, moving or relocating or moving in with family or taking care of family. That stuff can happen. But for you, I think it's more about just feeling heard with some of these people more than anything. Outside of that, you know, I think you're gonna navigate this a lot better than most people because you're going to be seeing these trines to some of your personal planets. The only other thing that I would say just to watch for is that in the midst of these, you know, eclipses and also like retrogrades, planets are coming back into your 2nd house, which can bring you more money. It can also bring you a renewed sense of feeling more confident and self-assured and knowing what it is that you really truly want. And that can be financially, but that can also be, I really want to have a relationship with this relative. I want to work on it. You know, I really want to move to this place. This is going to be my goal. So I'm going to save money or I'm going to make the necessary sacrifices to be able to do some of these things. And I think a lot of Capricorn and Capricorn risings, it's about moving, it's about money. You know, it's also going to be like, well, do I make the move now and risk it? Or do I play it smart and be more cautious? And do I get a roommate or do I move in with someone or do I go back home before making the bigger move, which could ultimately be like next year, right? Just don't get sucked into the trap with the opposition of Pluto that there is like dominating relationship dynamics and power struggles and stuff that's coming up. And don't let the fear of how that changes relationships or your career, if you're making some choices that are going to be best for you emotionally or best for your home or your living situation more than anything, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Nicole. We have Briana, TR, and then Roy. What's up, Briana? So you want to know eclipse, and then you want to know nodal return. Let's see. I want to make sure I have the right one. All right. So I've got you here January 25th, 1988. And that was at 9:21 p.m. in Sacramento. Don't sugarcoat it for me. Don't worry. Ha! Look at this retrograde in your 7th. How's it going? Well, okay, a couple things, right? I want you to think back. So when you're like 18 or 19 years old, that's the time that you have your nodal return. Okay, so every 18, 19 years, we have that nodal return. And this is kind of like the hard alignment of where we've been and maybe where we need to get out of our own way, South Node, and where we're going and the direction of our soul's purpose and kind of growth, right? So the good news is when you're having your nodal return, the universe is working in your favor and it's trying to align you with your path. That's the positive. The challenge is that this is happening simultaneously with a Saturn transit, which makes it all that much more karmic. And for some people, it feels like I'm needing to break through. It feels like a curse. Like North Node Saturn can feel like I'm cursed. How do I get out of this? Like I'm stuck. It's also happening simultaneously while your chart ruler, Mercury, is retrograde, where you're reassessing or rethinking or reconnecting or disconnecting maybe with certain people. And then Venus is retrograde, where literally Venus rules your money, your possessions, your security, your self-esteem, and like whether or not you feel safe or connected or even valued by certain relationships. And the 7th house could be your therapist, your astrologer, romantic partners, clients, one-on-one relationships of any kind. So just having your nodal return would be enough for me to be like, look, here's the deal. You know, your North Node is in the 7th. And it's about finding a significant relationship and somebody who comes in a very mysterious way, 24. And then on top of that, your North Node is conjunct Juno. So it's about learning to meet somebody who's going to be a significant soul partner. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's your forever person. It doesn't mean it's the person you get married to. It can, because Juno is about marriage. But it's somebody who comes in that's going to teach you what it feels like emotionally and spiritually to be committed. Keep in mind, there's still eclipses here in the fall. There's still retrogrades that are going to be happening through here in the fall. We're even going to see a Mercury retrograde here next year. But this is one hell of a nodal return because you're having it with Saturn. And I feel like if you're single, this is the time where I would really be focusing on cleaning out all of the hangups, the issues, the problems that you've had with people in the past. Maybe finally letting go of people who are lost or forgiving people who have hurt you. It can even be a time where if you're open, significant people will come into your life, right? People who you're meant to meet. And it can be romantic, platonic, it can be spiritual. And you'll realize who or what is worth investing in and who's got your back. What's interesting is that when we look at the ruler of your North Node natally, it's Jupiter. And your natal Jupiter is in the 8th. Where Chiron is right now. So you're saying, I want relationship, I want partnership, I want to evolve and be a part of a pair, right? But I'm wounded. Chiron on your Jupiter is like, you know, things have not gone well in the past and I've been very vulnerable and I got hurt and I got burned. And there's been insecurities, abandonment, psychological issues, financial issues. And just Chiron being on top of your Jupiter means that you know, maybe you're meeting people that are having self-esteem issues or they're having financial issues, and that's causing some situation where they're in and out and they're not as consistent with the retrogrades in your 7th. Literally, the retrograde means somebody changes direction. So they can be around, then they vanish, and they come back. or, you know, windows of opportunity that are opening for other people to be working on or healing themselves. So they're in turn, you're bringing in a person who's healed and you're not repeating some of the same patterns that you have in previous relationship cycles. Very highly aspected. Look at your Chiron. Even your Chiron squares your north and your south node. And you've got Saturn square your north and your south node. You're one reluctant little soul. You know, karma of marriage is your 4th house, and you got Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus here. So you either come from like a blended family, or maybe parents split, or you moved around a lot, or there hasn't been a lot of stability here. And so when you have planets square the north and the south node, it means you must integrate that energy, and you need to learn to work with it so you can kind of come into your north node. So I look at Saturn, Neptune, Uranus as, okay, so you've had some unusual living situations, and maybe you've moved around a lot, or maybe you come from a mixed background or culture of some kind, but that is actually going to help you embrace that North Node, Juno in Pisces, where through moves or traveling or relocations, you meet people, you connect with other cultures, you meet people who are foreign, Pisces. And then that Chiron square the north and the south node is also kind of showing where it's like, okay, well, there's also some kind of career question marks, or trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing or what your purpose is. And something about home impacts career, and something about relationships impacts career and also home. And there's constantly this kind of like, if you've noticed every 7 years, it's like you see a super hyper focused kind of theme in one area, and it makes you either move, change jobs, or change relationships, right? Like that always happens. I have some of the same aspects in my chart, so I know how that works. I think that if this were me, if I'm hung up on anybody, I would be letting them go, and like consciously being like, if I'm having dreams about them, or if they're coming back, or they're confused, or they're wondering if I woulda, coulda, shoulda, I would be like, I forgive you, let's move on. And also at the same time, you know, retrogrades in the 7th can bring people back. And that doesn't mean you open the door to everybody, but if somebody is meant to come back, man, with Saturn and Venus conjunct the North Node, you know, it can mean that it's like, if it's true love, or if it's that person you're supposed to marry, or if you're supposed to have a kid with somebody, you know, you could meet them, but also it's like a revolving door where it's like some people are leaving. And if you actually do the cord cutting and you release them and you mean it, you have to feel it, right, Pisces? Somebody new can kind of show up. So it can very much be about saying, okay, goodbye. And then you're getting ready for like the next one to kind of like come in. So I think the solar eclipse, because now this one, see, the other solar eclipses for the most part have been in your 8th house. So there has been fear of evolving and changing, or there has been lots of change and it's been out of your control or financial, or there's been endings of situations. This one's in your 7th house. So it's more kind of along the lines of like a Libra rising that's like, okay, you have new relationships coming in. What are you going to do about it? Well, it's ruled by Mars. Mars is in your 10th. So do you want to have some new work partnership? Do you want to collaborate with somebody? Do you change jobs? Do you meet somebody through work? You know, and this can also be just really touching on the themes of the 8th house. I think embracing some of the new vulnerability that might come with like a new relationship, and where you're approaching intimacy and vulnerability differently. Right? And it's sextiling your sun, it's sextiling Pluto, you know, so it's like, this is all about romance and taking chances and like falling in love, but doing it in a new way, not doing it in the way that you've done it in the past. So man, this is a chart that's pretty lit up, honestly, all the way until about the end of next month, you know, even going into May, because Mercury and Venus are kind of in the midpoints between your Chiron and also your Saturn. It's like, do you want to move towards the future, or do you want to stay in the past? Right? Crazy stuff. I've had similar retrogrades there that squared my 4th house, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and my Chiron in the 10th house. And that was definitely like a 2-month period in my life where I was like, fuck everybody. I don't want to deal with anybody from the past anymore. It was like, nope, you're not going into the future, you know? And some of those decisions about who I wasn't going to work with anymore, who I wasn't going to kind of collaborate with anymore, who I wasn't going to date anymore, all of those people got replaced by much better things that were much more a part of the dharma of that North Node, right? Yeah, everybody has. You're gonna feel like the solar eclipse in Aries is always a little feral, but this one at a 9 is kind of like, okay, well, you know what? Let's be optimistic about where we're going, and let's not get hung up on the past. The Mars square Chiron stuff will be the past, and this could be professional stuff for you as well. So, just some food for thought. It gets better once you get out of these squares. The squares make the chart turn. And you got planets in all your cardinal houses, so it's like you have a very dynamic life. Hopefully that's helpful. All right, so we've got TR, Roy, and then Estrella. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so TR says 329.93. General reading focused on love and relationships. For context, I had a very difficult breakup in the middle of 23 and set off major changes in my life, and I was devastated, but I feel that I've come out the other side and I'm in a better place. I'm still single, have not had much going on in this part of my life. Where should I be on the lookout for love or a new person? Do you think this person from 2023 could reemerge? You're a Libra rising. I'm going to slap your hands for even asking me that question. I've met a couple of people, but nothing major. Thanks. FYI, I may or may not be on the live stream, but I look forward to your reading. All right. What's up, Roy? You're next on deck, so get ready. We're going to talk all about your returns. All right, so TR is a Libra rising. And they've got a sun in Aries and a moon in Gemini. Wow, look at that. Solar eclipse on your birthday. So a happy birthday to you because it's going to be smack dab on your sun. Couple things. The reason why I was jokingly saying I'm going to slap your hands is that you've got Mercury and Venus that's going retrograde through your 7th house. So it's kind of like, all right, in all fairness, it's kind of like, am I going to hear from them? You know, Mercury is kind of connected to your 12th house of if you didn't get closure or if you're wondering or if that person has healed or moved on. It's also connected to your 9th house, which is about your philosophy, I think, in relation to relationships. And as it retrogrades, it's going back into your 6th and 5th. So it kind of brings on the Scorpio rising that's like, hey, Mercury retrograde, you know, in the 5th house, Venus retrograde in the 5th house. You want to get back into dating. Do you meet somebody that really kind of knocks your socks off at some point between now and, let's say, May? We don't really commit, right, until we see until we see Venus and Mercury go direct. Let's wait. The other thing to think about is that your 7th house has been through it. So when you say, like, the last 2 years, you're finally coming out the other side, I mean, 2023, you had a solar eclipse at 29 in your 7th, where it sounds like it cleared the decks relationship-wise. 2024, you had a solar eclipse right on your descendant. But that squared Mars. So it got you to think more about, hey, I need to be more proactive maybe in my career or be taking, you know, responsibility for the types of people that I'm dating, or maybe I'm just really focused on, you know, my life outside of dating and relationships. And now you have a solar eclipse that's going to be happening in Aries on your birthday. So that means everything's brand new this year, right? So solar eclipse birthdays, new moon birthdays, it's like everything's fresh. You do feel like a bunch of stuff gets shaken out right before your birthday. So I wonder how things have been the last couple of weeks. But Mars rules your 7th. And if you look at your chart, this solar eclipse is ruled by Mars, and you're kind of having your Mars return. Yes, it's in a square to Chiron, so there is still like this wound that's coming up about being like, okay, I feel like I'm like alone out in the world, you know, Mars in the 10th. But it's also about your drive and your push and your want for that committed relationship, for somebody who, you know, you can be official with, for, you know, somebody you can go out and do life with. Mars in the 10th house is like who you work with, who you're planning life with. You know, it's like your partner in crime. And a relationship with a chart like this, when you have Mars and Juno like on the midheaven, it means that you do need somebody who wants to be very public. It is highly aspected. Mars opposes your Neptune and Uranus, so it tells me that sometimes communication can be an issue, or actual distance, or kind of where you're living versus where they're living, or maybe how you grew up versus how they grew up. And this all makes a hard angle to Venus, your chart ruler, which is retrograde, which means you love different. So very, very interesting stuff. Communication, philosophy, you know, your perspective on relationships and your belief systems, that's something that you're kind of working out in relationships. And if you have Venus retrograde, you love deeply, But when Venus is retrograde, and it's retrograde in Aries, so you're having a retrograde around the same degrees and signs which you are bored under, so you might navigate this better than most. You're needing to maybe wait until you start seeing the effects of, I would say, the full moon in Libra. You know, you're going to see that in about a month's time. That'll be right along your ascendant in opposition to Venus. You could meet someone. You're also going to see in this next year, in 2026, Saturn's going to go into your 7th house. It's going to hit your natal Venus. I have a couple people from 93 who are Libra risings that are in my practice that I've seen that have Venus in the 7th house. And I've had to tell all of them, just wait till Saturn shows up, because when Saturn hits your chart ruler and it's in the 7th, you're going to have a very significant relationship dynamic that's going to happen. Either somebody comes back, you decide if you're going to make it work, or you're going to meet somebody new, and it could potentially be a very karmic relationship. But once again, because your Venus and your Mars is so highly aspected, I almost feel inclined to tell you, do not be focused on what's happened in the past. We want to be looking at what's coming forward. And a really strong Mars transit will bring in a new relationship. So like the solar eclipse is planting the seed, but you know, in this next year, Jupiter hitting your Mars makes me feel like whether you're traveling or you're in a work scenario, you're going to meet someone. And it's very strong from like the end of July through about September. And then it's going to retrograde back and it's going to hit your Mars again. And that's good for relationships in January of 26. And then it's going to hit one more time, and that's going to be in April. And right around that time is when Saturn's hitting your Venus, where you have to decide, am I moving for them? Are they moving for me? You know, are we coming together? Are we living together? Can we move through some of these like life changes, which will be very significant? Because all these transits in the 7th house is like whether or not somebody is rising to the occasion to do what? Jupiter in the 10th, which is their 4th, move in together, you know, get married, have a family. If those are things you want to do, I use those examples because 7th house is partnering, and, you know, Jupiter in Cancer is at least moving, buying a house, some kind of expansion of the home. Very, very highly aspected Venus. Look at even the Jupiter opposition. So I would say those times are when relationship stuff seems more prominent. I think that this is all leading, though, to spring of next year where you're going to make some bigger decisions. And this year, since you're turning 32, you're going to be in a Gemini annual perfection, which is a 9th house perfection. So that means that basically until March of next year when you have your birthday, you're focusing on 9th house things. Okay, so the 9th house is travel, philosophy, your belief system. It's about education, and it's ruled by Mercury. So you need to watch Mercury retrogrades. Mercury retrogrades will impact you. You're having one now, you're going to have one in July, you're going to have another one in November. And in your whole sign 9th house, you have your south node and you have your moon. So that tells me with some of the transits this year, with Jupiter going into your 9th, you need to travel. You might move, you might go back to school, you might do some training or certification. There might be a new teacher or a mentor or a guru that comes into your life. Also, your natal Mercury is in the whole sign 6. So you're learning new skills, you're traveling for work, you're going to have an eclipse conjunct your Mercury. There's going to be so many opportunities to kind of spread your wings and connect with new people that I personally feel like I would be optimistic about who's coming in. Aries is what's new. Solar eclipses, we want new people. We want to get rid of old people. Could people come back during a Mercury retrograde and a Venus retrograde? For sure. I don't think I've seen a single Libra rising so far that I've spoken to that hasn't had that experience. But that doesn't mean that you have to open that door. And there's always going to be for you this back and forth about the past. And a lot of that is because you have, you know, Neptune and Uranus in the sign of the past, 4th house, in opposition to Mars. It's, oh, well, if I move on, you know, what happens if they come back? Who gives a shit? They can come back, but that really shouldn't stop you from seeing what else is out there. That solar eclipse wants to bring a new person into your life. And I think that you may meet somebody who's going to be a combination of Sagittarius, Leo, and Cancer. I want you to look for those signs, okay? It could be their big 3, their sun, moon, or their rising. The reason why I say that is if you look at the ruler of your 7th house, right? So this is 19, which is a relationship. The ruler is Mars. Mars is in the 9th. So that means they could have a Sagittarius kind of theme about them. They could be tall. They could have a man bun. They could travel a lot. They could be culturally diverse, whatever. They could be from a foreign land, Mars and Cancer. And then it's at a 17, which is a Leo degree. And then it's also obviously in the sign of Cancer. So those are the signs that I want you to pay attention to. It's not always the signs. Maybe you see a bunch of planets in their ninth. Maybe you see they have a Sag rising and a Cancer moon, you know, something like that. But Mars is conjunct Juno. So this means that in this next year, you have a really great opportunity to meet somebody while traveling, going through education, traveling for work, training. And very likely when you're focusing on your career, because that's a part of your 10th house transit, it will put you out in the open and in the spotlight and make it much more likely that you're going to meet somebody. Somebody's going to see you, right? At least in my opinion. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of like openness to see what else is kind of coming in. And I feel like the next 2 years with Saturn going over your Venus and going into your 7th house, it's going to reactivate some of the eclipses we've had. So it's definitely going to be more about, are you bringing in partners that are very clear about their vision and what they want? Certainly, you know, Libra risings need to be careful. Saturn in the 7th house could be older relationships, karmic relationships, challenges, but still it's about, are they being mature? Are they growing up? You know, Saturn in Aries doesn't perform very well. Neptune is there. So you also need to make sure, do they know what they want? Are they being clear? Are they being, you know, kind of direct about things? If you're focusing on that, I feel like you're going to definitely be able to navigate this a little bit better. But, you know, with a chart like this, I would say it would be really beneficial for you probably next year when Saturn goes into Aries and it starts coming into conjunction with like your Sun and your Venus. Go and talk to an astrologer. Go and talk to an astrologer who's a woman, Venus, somebody who's a little bit older than you. And somebody who's going to be kind of more or less kind of like a, not like a mentor, it could be a guide, but somebody who's also going to be like a coach, because you need, with that Sun in Aries and the Venus in Aries, somebody who's like a little tough love, right? Who's going to be like, no, we need somebody who's better. So that way you're not falling into the trap of all of these squares and these oppositions. But once again, when you have planets that all square each other in the kind of the cardinal angles of the chart, it creates a lot of dynamic changes between home, family, relationships, work, all that stuff. You'll have to let me know if somebody pops in after that solar eclipse, especially looking at these two times, okay? So when we have the full moon in Libra coming up, that's going to be right on your ascendant, ruled by Venus, and Venus is conjunct Saturn, so that could be significant, maybe meeting somebody at the gym or at work. And then when we have the full moon in Aries, which will be in the fall, and that's going to be right along your Venus, that's big, around October 6th of this year. Those are going to be some times that you're going to want to watch, especially with this one, because it's going to be on your Venus. So yeah, you'll probably see something kind of start to materialize right around there. Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, TR. Have a happy birthday. All right, we got Roy, Estella, and then Zach. What's up, Roy? Thank you for your patience. All right, so I want to make sure I'm looking at the right return for you, because Roy says 10/2/65, and that was at 12:15 a.m. Let me change this because this says 12 a.m. All right, so Roy says, you told me you could say when my Saturn return was over. And then Roy here, whatever you think stands out, Jupiter return. Which return do you want me to look at? I can definitely tell you your Saturn return is over. It's done. Saturn has left the house that Saturn returned in your 8th house. And Saturn is now more than 10 degrees away from your Saturn. So is Saturn still in Pisces? Can you feel like the remnants of it this year? Yeah, a little bit. But now Saturn is in much better aspect. Saturn is now trining your ascendant. Let's put the transits here. There we go. Saturn is coming into a trine with your ascendant, which is great. That means that through persistence and patience and vision and beliefs and spiritual pilgrimages, or, you know, overcoming issues with the 9th house, law, legality, travel delays, you know, blockages of faith and belief. Now it's like aligning and helping you feel more emotionally strong, you know, kind of like reborn. It's also trining your Mars and your Venus. So throughout this year, you're only going to really feel it between like now and like May, and then Saturn's going to go into Aries. But in the fall, it's going to come back and it's going to trine. Oh, he says 2 lemon cars. I'm wondering if that's more connected to like your Mercury stuff, because you've had eclipses and retrogrades in opposition to your sun and your Mercury. Actually, a lot of them. You had a solar eclipse. You have another eclipse opposing it. Did this become like legal matters with the retrogrades and stuff in the ninth? Like, did you take anybody to court over it, or were you able to kind of go through, legal channels or networks and find ways to be able to deal with it? Wow, especially because it squared your Jupiter. So that also talks about delays and issues with things breaking down and having to fix stuff. Ouch. Yeah, I mean, the Saturn return's over. It's done. Your Jupiter return, on the other hand, you will only get one. And that Jupiter return is going to be interesting because your Jupiter is at 0 degrees. So it's at a cardinal degree, 0. Jupiter return, I have heard people say when they have their return in the whole sign, first house, it's good, but when it's in the Placidus 12th house, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So you're going to see right around June the 9th through, let's say, that new moon. So June the 9th through June 25th, okay? That's when Jupiter is hovering between, 0 and 3 degrees. Positive is your Jupiter return usually wants to bring you good things, right? Expansion, good fortune, prosperity, joy, travel, all that stuff. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So, you'll have to go back and look at, what happened in 2013? What happened in, 2001? And just go back 12 years at a time, and you can see what took place during that time. But because your Jupiter's in the 12th Placidus, it's almost like there were things that ended and completed for you that at the time it may not have seemed positive, but it was like the universe is kind of clearing stuff for you emotionally or subconsciously with Cancer in the 12th. Jupiter represents, your 12th house, your 9th house, which can be about travel, law, legality, your belief systems. It's also kind of connected to your health and your wellness. So it's not uncommon when you have Jupiter in the 12th here, you go on an international trip, you take a meditation class, spiritually you expand, you need more sleep, you reorganize your bedroom, you're listening to meditation tapes, maybe you're learning about hypnosis, past life, spiritual stuff, right? And what's difficult is that when the Jupiter return comes in, because it's at 0, it's also simultaneously going to be coming into a square with Saturn. So it's kind of the same stuff that you've been dealing with like Saturn in your 9th and, Jupiter in your 12th. Although a lot of other astrologers will say, well, actually Jupiter's in your 1st house, which is about growth and, exploration and positivity. And it's squaring Saturn and Neptune in the 10th, which is going to mean, okay, I want to grow, I want to expand, I want to travel, but I have so much responsibility, or I've got this new job, or I'm exploring what kind of new career direction I'm going in, or I'm learning how to kind of channel my assertiveness or my new direction in my career in a different way. So we've seen Saturn and Jupiter square now twice. We had it in August of 2024. We had it in December of 2024. And then we're going to have another square that's going to happen in June, right when Jupiter goes into Cancer. So you may feel as if there are some things that are kind of coming to a conclusion or a completion that might be testing you a little bit. It might test whether or not you feel like you're in control or if you have a say. But I think a lot of Cancer risings with Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is a turning point in their life where it's like, I have to be in the driver's seat. And if I don't like what I'm doing for a living, I'm going to make the change because I choose happiness. Or I'm finally retiring. I'm tired. I don't want to work anymore. I'd like to travel, or I'd like to have more time at home with my family. So it really depends on what you've got going on in your life. I will just tell you that it'll be brief in June that we'll see the square. And then for the rest of 2026, Jupiter's going to be in Cancer. Well, it is, but it's not really going to cross your ascendant. So this is why I say good things will be coming your way. Jupiter in the 12th house feels like it's a very spiritual time. You're kind of in your cocoon. Maybe you're meditating, resting, shifting something about your spiritual beliefs or values. But you're in your cocoon. You're not really going to see the full transformation of all the good things that are going to come until you've gone through this clearing and this ending. And you will see that next year when Jupiter sits on your ascendant. So that's going to be kind of closer to May, June, July 2026. And I don't say that to discourage you. I'm just letting you know that you may see a little bit of like a delayed response with some of the good things that are kind of coming in. But listen, it's going to be a very active transit, okay? Because you've got Jupiter in the early degrees, Sun and Mercury in Libra. You've got your Moon in Capricorn, and Saturn and Neptune are going into Aries. So for all whole sign purposes, you want growth, travel, and better health. You also are realizing that there needs to be changes with your relationship to your home and family. You also might find that you're wanting to attract a new partner, or you're going back and forth with a relationship where there's some distance or travel. And simultaneously, you're also trying to navigate kind of feeling like you have more independence and responsibility. Your hands are going to be full, basically, with Saturn and Neptune square your Moon and your Jupiter. And then on the flip side, Jupiter is coming in to oppose your Moon and square Saturn and Neptune. This is going to create a mutable cross. I think probably the most significant thing this year is to pray, keep a regular spiritual practice or something where you're reflecting or you're doing some gratitude work with Jupiter in the 12th to better navigate some of the changes that are going to be coming for your professional life or your career as you're getting into next year and kind of trusting the process with what's playing out. Because the Moon is connected to your Jupiter and it's in the 6th, and also because, Jupiter rules your 6th house, you're going to learn a lot this year about how emotional habits impact your physical health, how your sleep can positively or negatively impact your productivity or your habits. And Jupiter in opposition to the Moon, we can definitely be quite emotional, even though Capricorn moons aren't really known for that. You're more emotional behind the scenes with Jupiter in your 12th. And this tells me that if you're not actually working through some emotions, you can kind of see it impact your bones, your knees, Capricorn things, your teeth, your skin, your nails, your hair. And a lot of it is because of sometimes challenges or feeling overwhelmed in communicating. Your Sun conjunct Mercury, right? Your Mercury's combust, actually. So there's too much conversation with family, with siblings, with this, with that, and it can kind of like stress you out. So you're learning to basically go, I don't have to respond to that. I can, put it on, do not disturb for a little bit. I can make sure I get some sleep or think about it before I respond to something. He said, I just cracked my rib. I'm sorry to hear that. I've heard a lot of Cancer risings telling me they've had injuries. And I think it could be connected to Mars. Mars has been retrograde on your ascendant, sending you into the 12th house. So it's saying, nope, we need to rest. We need to be away from some people or some things. So I definitely feel like, maybe it's teaching you something early prior to Jupiter showing up. But it's a good time to work with water, when and if you're physically feeling better. If your doctor says, hey, we need to get you mobile again, water resistance can be good. Spas, saunas, soaking, anything with hot water, or even massage, can be really helpful, or steam. Very Mars and Cancer in the 12th house is like steam related. Not just for the aches and pains and kind of bouncing back, but also like emotionally, that's going to help you kind of release some of this stuff, especially with Mars trying all your Scorpio stuff right now and some of the trines that are going on with Saturn and Neptune. It needs you to take this time emotionally to rest. Something that my mentor always told me over and over again was like, the only thing that's going to ground you is going to be weight, pain, or, some kind of like injury. And it's true. I mean, have you guys ever seen like a really thin psychic? They just don't make them. They don't, because as an intuitive or as a reader, you need to be grounded. And a lot of us will either have health ailments, or we're heavier maybe than we should be, or we've got some kind of pain or some kind of like heavy physical or emotional issue because it keeps us grounded. So you may not have some of the weight issues, but if you have some of the emotional stuff that you're not dealing with, with a Mars retrograde on your ascendant, it's like, boom, square Chiron especially, you're going to have some kind of an injury that the universe is using to kind of ground you and go, hey, you're not paying attention, so we're going to put you down for a little bit until you deal with this stuff. And when you sit alone in the 12th house, you start to kind of think about things differently, and you're like, yeah, it's causing too much, inflammation or issues in my body. So that is maybe the lesson prior to Jupiter showing up. And trust me, you don't want the lesson in a negative way. Jupiter can make things bigger. So Jupiter in your 12th house square Saturn and Neptune could like really put you down. It could put you in a hospital. It could put you in some kind of healing situation, but it could also make you go, I gotta sleep better. You know, I gotta take some me time. I gotta be in nature. I gotta take a hot bath once a week, you know, whatever it is. And that Jupiter will bring you joy in the 12th house. It'll help you move through that in a positive way and go, I understand why it happened. I don't want the lesson again. I got it. Message received. I'm going to be working on grounding my energy and my emotions. So hopefully that's kind of helpful for you. Good luck, especially the next 2 years. Saturn squaring your moon. I see that could be definitely some challenges with health stuff. And I think a lot of it's just being a little bit more accident prone. So resistant work can definitely be really helpful. Building up, doing some like light weightlifting or some hiking. Any kind of resistance is really good when you've got Saturn that's making squares in your chart. Good luck, Roy. I hope that helps. I've got Estella, Zach, and then Julie. You guys are all on deck. And thank you guys for your patience. We are moving through these. How are you guys doing with the eclipse energy? Has anybody had a crazy eclipse experience yet? All right, so Estella's here March 13th, 93, 4:52 p.m. in Germany. And she says, I'd like to move to Portugal. When is the right time this year? What's up, Zach? I want to relocate from Germany to Portugal. When is the right time? Well, you've been so patient, huh? You have had over the last year or two Saturn square your moon, so it has not quite been the time yet. Obviously, Jupiter is associated with your 4th house if you're a Virgo rising. And Jupiter is on your south node. So to me, it looks like you're like, you know what? I'm ready to give up an old job, to move, to relocate, to change positions, maybe to not be as heavily work focused, even if you don't have to change anything about your job. Could also mean that you're looking for a job that would allow you to move as well. And Jupiter and Saturn have been in a square. So it looks like there has been this sense of being like, okay, maybe there's been too much work, not enough focus on relationships. And having Jupiter and Saturn square does impact your 4th house and your ability to move, basically is what I'm getting at. So when would it be a good time to move? Well, I want to either see something positive happening with your moon, which by the way, this solar eclipse that's coming in is trining your moon. And it's at a 9. It's also trining your north node. So you're embracing change. Eclipses, retrogrades in your 8th house. This is also about finding money, saving money, investing money, figuring out how you're going to fuel this or how much you're going to need to get there or what's going to tie you over if you end up kind of going in between jobs, right? That's another way of looking at this. And the eclipse is in opposition to your Jupiter in the 2nd house. So it's definitely bringing up costs and expenses revolving around your move. She goes, I'm looking for a remote job. So you're most likely to see when there is a positive transit, either in your 10th house or when there is a conjunction to your 10th house lord, which would be Mercury, likely you're going to see a job. So I don't know if you're like, I'm going to move or I'm going to find the job first. You know, I'm always one, maybe it's just me, to always be like, yeah, find the job first before you move, especially if you're doing with these retrogrades in the 8th house, because you could really eat through cash and savings. But you are going to have Mercury coming in conjunction with Jupiter down the road, which could give you exactly what you're looking for. So first things first is new moon in your 10th house, right on your midheaven, May 26th. This is a good time to be looking. You can be looking now. I mean, even Mercury retrogrades in your 7th, you're looking for somebody to work with, but nothing's going to feel totally solid until May. So new moon, I would start looking. And this new moon is also going to trine Pluto, which means if you want to change in your workspace, you want to work remotely, you want to do something digital, and you want to make money, this is the time to look. If you're going to move, you need to see something going on with Jupiter. So what's cool is Mercury will conjunct Jupiter in the late degrees, right here, around June 7th. So I'm wondering sometime between May and June, are you negotiating? Do you get a job? Are you looking for something remote? And then boom, you're going to have this full moon in Sagittarius conjunct your north node on June 10th. So it's possible movements coming right around here. Obviously, Jupiter is the ruler of this. So when you have a full moon in the 4th, it's like, okay, I'm moving. Here I go, you know, packing up my stuff. Or maybe you have already started the moving process. And the ruler is obviously Jupiter. And Mercury is conjunct Jupiter in the 10th. Sometime between May and the end of June, I think it's very possible that you could secure a job and begin the moving process. However, if you don't, there's other time periods. You are going to see another time is going to be when Mercury is turning retrograde in your 12th. It will come into a trine with Saturn, so it can mean that you're on the hunt again looking for a job that's remote, that's international at the end of July. Jupiter will hit your Mars, so that means that you are invited maybe to go and meet friends or stay with friends or join a company that's in another country at the end of July going into August. And then also you're going to have a pretty significant transit down the road when Mercury turns retrograde, your chart ruler, in the 4th, and it will conjunct Mars. And this means that you are either now moving, Mercury, Mars, we're doing it now, you know, or that you've moved somewhere, you've spent some time there, and you don't like it, or you don't like where you're living and you're moving back. The only kind of caution that I have for this is knowing that Sun, Mars, you know, Mercury, they're all going to come into squares with Saturn and Neptune, is like, it's either going to be you going back and forth with questioning whether or not you still want to live somewhere and be working for someone, or there is a lot of back and forth going, well, do I want to live here? You know, I've got like a complicated relationship situation going on. But all three of these times seem to be really prominent. I like actually the second half of 2025 that Jupiter is going to be trining Saturn. I feel like you could move, you could have a new job, you could be hanging out with new friends or maybe people that you already know in that country. And it's expanding your home base, it's helping you be social, and it's also supporting your relationships. Usually when we start seeing Jupiter trine planets in the 4th house, that's another time. And like next year, you're going to have Saturn and Jupiter trine your moon. So you'll see Saturn trining your moon kind of the beginning of 2026. And then Jupiter is going to start trining your moon, and that's going to be in the summer of 2026. So, you know, you have a number of different windows. I just think that with like the eclipses and the things that have been happening in the Saturn transits, it just has not been the right time. But make the most of the Jupiter transit. I would say between now and June is the best time to be looking for a job. And you might even take more than one position. Gemini, it might be like, well, I'm doing this part-time and I'm doing that part-time. And if I can't find something full-time, but I can find 2 remote jobs, I can do both. I would also look into like digital personal assisting. I feel like with Jupiter going into your 10th house, it could be like having more than one client. And because Jupiter is the ruler of your Mercury and your Sun, and now you're going to see planets, you know, kind of coming off of that, you could potentially kind of have a business where you have more than one client, or you could do something supplemental that you could do anywhere until you kind of figure out where you want to land professionally and what you want to do, right? Anyway, I hope that that's helpful. I hope you make the move. That sounds like really, really exciting. What's up, Robbie? Glendar says, 2 ex-boyfriends popped up yesterday, shutting those doors down. Yeah, you just got to say, not today, Satan. All right, so we've got Zach, Julie, and then Carly. You guys are all on deck. You guys have been awesome. Thank you for your patience. Zach is back at it. He's got another question. I think it was like still moving through some work stuff. Let's pull this up. August 6th, 99. Hey, Candace, still moving forward with this career shift, starting to see the vision and really enjoying the work, but feeling the financial pressure and having to keep the faith. Here for solar eclipse. Would love any insight you have in how to work with these upcoming transits. March has certainly revealed new goals, challenges, and desires. All right, well, let's take a look. So, yes, I mean, especially for you, knowing that all of this is like right on your midheaven, you know, the eclipses and the retrogrades are definitely like, oh, this is coming, but like, how do we swing it, right? The sun is what's connected to money. And even though, you know, a solar eclipse is going to plant the seed for a new job opportunity or a new beginning, the sun is connected to what you're invested in, what you're passionate about, what you can create, what you're hoping to achieve, and like how tied up in this are you. Sun conjunct the North Node, this is a lifetime where you're learning to be like, if there's something that you really want, you're either going to build it, create it, or you're going to invest in it. And it has to be something that you're crazy about. So what's positive is that the solar eclipse trines your sun and your North Node. Maybe, perhaps there's this feeling of needing to wait until this next month when Mercury hits that degree, right around here. around April 24th, 5th, and 6th. And then when Venus hits that degree around mid-May, that the pieces are really coming together. The other side of this is as a Cancer rising, you know, a lot of you guys started the Mars retrograde in your money house. So it was this sense of going like, well, I have to kind of strip something away, or, you know, decide to take time away from something, or maybe I'm going to quit something so I can go and start a business, or I'm, you know, training to do something. There's something like that you've had to kind of say, look, you know, I have to be willing to kind of endure having less than now, because the potential and the opportunity to have so much more freedom in the long run. Recently, I saw something that was like on X. I saved it. I should post it, but it was like a chart of like an arrow, and it was a graph, and it said 5 years of pain, and then it said 50 years of freedom. And the way that you look at the hard work, the dedication, the sacrifice, the commitment that you're putting into something, and it may be several months, maybe several years, but ultimately it's what buys you that freedom. Kind of reminds me of Cancer risings right now. I think a lot of you guys are trying to be optimistic about the future, even though you're not seeing the money yet. That's something that is very sensitive for you, because you have North Node conjunct the Sun, so you're here to have things, to achieve wealth and resources, and you have South Node Uranus, which means that also means that sometimes things fall apart, or things break down, or money is suddenly gone, or support, you know, feels like it's been kind of pulled out from underneath you, and you're learning to free yourself of some of these karmic kind of financial entanglements with some people, even if it's working for a company. So that way you can build your own thing. And obviously it also squares Saturn, by the way. So just kind of adding a little insult to injury, it's not necessarily going to come easy. I love that you have, and I've told you this before, I love that you have these squares all in fixed signs. You may not like it, but it adds a lot of grit to your chart. And I feel like as a Cancer rising with Mars now direct in your sign, it means that you have more incentive. There's more emotions behind, no, this is what I got to do. I have to do this. This is the right thing. And it's also trining Saturn and the North Node and Venus and Mercury in your ninth. So there's like spiritual lessons in this. There's mentorship in this. There's authors and teachers and other things that you're going to be learning to kind of help kind of formulate your vision for what you're building and creating. I know for a fact that in this next year, when Saturn starts trining your Sun, you'll see this more in 2026. And when Jupiter also goes through your second house, you're going to be like, thank God I did this. Thank God I got the show on the road when I did. And a lot of Cancer risings are having to learn to kind of forge a path ahead, which is going to be about a completely different career, or launching their own business, or being entrepreneurs, or like any of these things, but it will pay off. It will pay off, especially once you start seeing Saturn coming into trine, because Saturn is what? It's clients, partnerships, relationships. I mean, you're going to get to about this time next year and you're going to go, yes, I did that. I created that. Does it get a little tight between now and then? Yeah, sure. Mars is going to come back into Leo. It's going to oppose Pluto. So you're going to feel that financial tightness that's going to be happening, especially right around April, the end of April. And Pluto's dancing with Neptune. So it's like you're going to be really cautious or even fearful, revolving around taking on debt or loans or merging with people or borrowing money. So you want to be careful with finances at the end of April. And then you will see another re-evaluation of your financial situation, and that will be taking place for you at the end of July, right? But I think that staying the path is incredibly important. Yeah, I mean, South Node in the 8th house means that, you know, you may have to deal with some karmic debt, so there might be some working for some businesses or jobs to get the funding to eventually be able to, you know, kind of break free and do your own thing. But if Mars rules your 10th house and it's in the 5th, you want to do it yourself. I think things could actually get really busy for you in the fall. I don't think you have to wait that long to be working and be productive, but I definitely feel like once you get out of the summer and you're seeing stelliums showing up in your 5th house and in your 9th house and on your ascendant, you're going to start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to be like, I'm really glad that I did this. Just know that, you know, I think Aries is really great at starting things. Not so great at finishing them. They don't really think about how stuff is going to end or how you get from point A to point B. It just wants to get going. And I think part of the lesson of like the Saturn ingress, the Mercury retrograde, the Venus retrograde has been like, if we just rush through something and we're impulsive and we don't have a plan or a vision, we know it's not going to be successful. And I think that you're really aware of that if you're going to make these sacrifices and do some of the stuff that you're going to do, you know that you have to do this slow and steady because that's what's going to win the race. I would give this until the summer to really kind of work through some of this stuff. Saturn also rules your 8th house. So as it's going into the 10th, sometimes it's going to be about, finding people who want to invest in your ideas, or taking on, people who want to be angel donors, or people who want to be partners, or if you're going to be taking out a business loan or a loan to kind of help kind of bridge the gap and so you can get things up and running. So those might be things that you consider. I wouldn't be afraid of it, but I would definitely stay the path, because I feel like you will be really glad you started something new since you have that 0 degree rising. It has to be something completely different than what you've done before. Hope that's helpful, Zach. You can do it. Keep me updated. I'm curious to see what happens. I have Sun in my 2nd house, and when I had Saturn going through my 10th house and Jupiter going through my 1st house, that's when I started my business. And then when Saturn got into my 2nd house way down the road, I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, thank God I started doing this when I started doing it, and it started to finally materialize, and then it was like a level up. So that's a ways down the road, but if you kind of get what I'm saying, everything is going to be based off of kind of your passion and your vision, All right, so we've got, who else? We've got Julie, Carly, and Danielle. You guys are all on deck. All right, so Julie, let's pull up that. All right, so Julie here, live solar eclipse reading, December 17th, 78, 12:50 p.m. in Detroit. She says, hi, Candace, would like to see what's coming up for a deep, meaningful, authentic, romantic partnership or marriage. I've only had not so good partners relationships my whole entire life. Anything else significant coming up for me? Welcome, Zach. Look at that, another 0 degree Aries. All right, so a couple things. Venus rules your 7th. Actually, let's put the transits on now. How about that? There we go. Venus rules your 7th. So naturally, when Venus is retrograde or there's a transit going on with your natal Venus, relationship stuff is going to come up, right? You got Venus conjunct Uranus in your 8th house. So relationships are going to be changing. I think, what's the word that I'm looking for? Unusual. They're not traditional. Venus Uranus kind of breaks apart, or there's back and forth, or kind of hot and cold. And Venus is retrograde right now, and it started retrograde in your sign. So there was a lot of like, can I bring a relationship to me? Because the ascendant is you and Venus is other people. And what do I value and what do I want in relationships? And Venus is actually coming into connection with Neptune. So there is this kind of like, well, am I always going to be alone? And it's meeting with Saturn. So there's lots of like karmic breakthroughs that's kind of happening for an Aries rising chart with these retrogrades. It's like if you're meant to be releasing some kind of storyline or some kind of blockage, or if you're meant to be calling somebody in or something in, it can come. What we want to see is outside of this transit, which is going to kind of be in play until mid-April. I kind of see the 12th house as your cocoon phase. I don't really see this as a time where you're bringing someone in, but certainly Venus coming back into your sign, that can bring somebody in, the beginning of May. Equally, we're going to want to see something going on with your natal Venus. So, Mars goes back into your 5th house in this next month. You can start dating. I think you're going to want to follow a different path than some of your friends or some of your peers with the opposition of Pluto. Jupiter will go into Cancer this year, and it will trine your Venus. And that can mean that it's more emotional. There's lots of potential growth or change on the home front. Maybe changes also in regards to the past and where you're living or who you're connecting with. And then you're going to see Mars, your chart ruler, going into Libra. And I have said this for a lot of Aries risings. I don't know if any of you guys have looked at this transit yet, but Mars is going to go into Libra. And it's debilitated there, right? Because it's the scales, so it can't really make up its mind. And Mars is going to be the ruler of Saturn and Neptune in Aries, which is retrograde. So I think for a lot of early Aries risings, there's going to be somebody who's going to be interested in you. And you're going to be like, I'm not so sure about this person. They seem very eager. They seem very interested in me. And that Saturn-Neptune's going to kick in where it's like, do I really want to give away my freedom? You know, am I interested in them? Are we on the same page? All while simultaneously, Mercury is going to be retrograde in your dating zone, and it's going right over your Jupiter and right over your moon. I would be paying attention to August. I think that with all of those things happening, like you're back and doing like the dating game and you're kind of like unsure about, you know, which way it's going to go or what's going to happen or if something is going to work out, but it could actually be quite positive for you. I think just to be honest, you know, looking at the transits isn't enough to guarantee whether or not a relationship comes in. Pluto in opposition to your moon might mean that you're uncomfortable maybe with going and meeting people in a group setting right now or in an unconventional way. Certainly Venus in Scorpio is used to being hurt and it has some challenging relationships. You add that with Pluto in your 7th, like yes, in general, you attract relationships that teach you lessons and require you and the other person to go through some kind of work. And it's deep soul work, which is very uncomfortable with Venus and Uranus in your 8th. With that being said, if you have certain transits that are kind of setting up in your progressions or, you know, in your annual perfections that can be showing that a relationship is coming in, that's going to show you more definitively whether or not something is going to stay. Whether that means it's long-term or short-term, it depends, but it can be more accurate than just looking at transits. So like, for example, you know, this year, since your birthday in December, you're in Aquarius year. So it's your whole sign, 11th house. So your ruler is Saturn, and Saturn's going to go into your sign, which means you have to make more of an effort to socialize, meet people, and connect. That's what it means. When it goes back into Pisces in the fall, you know, you're going to retreat a little bit more. And then as you're coming into your birthday at the end of this year, then you're going to go into your 12th house year, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's in your 5th. You know, you could have quite the romance and the love story going on, you know, end of 2025 going into 2026, just kind of going in sequential order, right? If we were to look at your progressions, for example, and see, okay, well, what's going on with her secondary progressions? What's kind of evolving in her chart? This moves very slowly over time. You've got a Gemini rising, you have got Sun in Aquarius, and you have got Venus in Sagittarius. And it's in your 7th, so that's good. Venus is no longer in Scorpio. It's hanging out, you know, in your 7th house, and that's a good placement for it. You are Mercury. Mercury's up here, and Jupiter is going to represent partners. So Jupiter right now in Leo, Mars is going retrograde or started its retrograde over it. So it wants you to travel more, communicate, connect, reach out to people, maybe try online dating, meet people in your local community or, you know, connect with people while you're mobile. Until Pluto comes out of an opposition with Jupiter, it does put some pressure on relationships this year into the beginning of next year. But there's a chance to reevaluate relationships certainly in November. And I also think that within a couple of years' time, when your progressed Venus goes into Capricorn, that's a couple of months. That's also going to be a pretty significant turning point in relationships, 2027 going into 2028, because then Venus is going to be in an earth sign that's fixed. So, you know, like I said, timing. I think pretty much the fall of this year going to the end of the year, you're going to see more opportunities. But any Venus-Uranus person, there's a storyline revolving around relationships are on and off, they're back and forth, they're inconsistent, they're unconventional. And I would say, you know, to navigate that better, maybe it's going to be, you know, meeting people and getting to know them a little bit and being like, okay, so, you know, have they healed previous traumas? Are they back and forth with other people? Are they into unconventional relationships? You know, you're going to see that a lot with some of the people that you've been in relationships with. And having your descendant at 0 degrees means that this is a new incarnation for you. So Aries means, you know, you're coming in and you're having to learn how to channel that Mars in your 10th house, which is kind of like boss lady. It's like, here's what I'm doing. Here's the plan. This is what's going on. Da, 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 da. Versus relationships are a brand new lesson for you. Maybe you're finally, you know, kind of having your first experience in this lifetime with some significant relationships. And like, yeah, 0 degrees of Libra is like the most indecisive, the most chaotic, you know, people that you're kind of like bringing in. And they're learning how to relate and partner. But that being said, Sagittarius Sun, look, Jupiter's going 7th house to your Sun. Even that's saying connecting with people locally or traveling. Good for relationships. Solar eclipse in Aries, 5 houses away from your sun, good for dating and relationships. But it all starts with you. And for the next year, Saturn and Neptune in and out of your ascendant is like, sure, you could look at it and go, am I always going to be alone? But you could also look at it and go, I'm not willing to trade my peace or my alone time, or, I'm not willing to sacrifice the relationship with myself for the wrong person, right? So just some food for thought. But I would go and learn about having your Venus conjunct Uranus. I would also say that even in spite of this conjunction, it's a 10-degree orb, but your Venus sextiles Mars. Mars is the dispositor of Venus. So there's definitely something here that's like, look, there can be, solid relationship. There can be a lot of depth. I feel like with Venus conjunct Uranus, like, go and find an astrology man. Go and find a guy who's into Tantra or Kundalini or yoga. That's very Venus-Uranus in the 8th house. Somebody who's going to be more open to kind of spiritual practices and relationships, and somebody who's a little different and unconventional, or maybe somebody who's an investor, right? Or they're into trading or something like that. That can be very much Venus-Uranus in the 8th house. But your Venus-Uranus aspects aren't entirely too bad, actually, when they sextile Mars. You might just need somebody who, likes a more direct, kind of militant, person. And sometimes when we have Sun conjunct Neptune, we're sensitive, we're compassionate, we're emotional, we can be passive. There can be, also this genuine kind of understanding and like wanting to see the best in people, right? Especially when I think about you having all this fire in your chart, things can move very quickly. But Sun Neptune women, sometimes they've had experiences with men that men can be avoidant, or they're absent, or men that have issues with addiction or alcohol, or they can be kind of emotionally or psychologically manipulative, or that there was some absent kind of father figure in their life. And that does square your South and your North Node. So it does color the storyline and the perspective of, men always leave, they're not consistent, they don't stay. And I would be really careful just how attached you become to that storyline, when you say, relationships don't work, or same thing when people say, my anxiety, I catch myself doing it all the time. I'm like, no, I don't own that. I don't want to own or possess that. I would say with your relationships, it's, yes, my relationships have been very unconventional. They've been unusual. And I've definitely attracted some very interesting partners into my life, but I would never attach myself to, relationships don't work out for me. We don't want to do that. That's the downside of the Venus Uranus aspect, is like, well, what's the point? People are so unpredictable. I'm not going to do it. So there is a way to work with that. You can have Venus conjunct Uranus and you can commit to somebody, but most of the time what people don't realize is that there is something subliminally within you, because Venus is what women show, Mars is what they go after. So if you have Mars in Capricorn, you like that, practical, reliable, stand-up, kind of hardworking dude, right? But your Venus in Scorpio is sexy, provocative, it's deep, right? And it's conjunct Uranus, which means there is something inherent within you that has some fear of vulnerability and putting yourself out there. So you may attract partners who are non-committal. And so that recognizing that pattern, that's like, oh my God, I'm doing it because I'm afraid of getting too close, is something that definitely should be considered, just considered. And Venus opposes Chiron, so there's also some vulnerability issues and some self-worth stuff that can kind of come up here. And I think for other people, it's more physical commitment, pleasure, insecurity issues, sexual issues as well, that they may have some like sexual, confusion, or they can have some unusual sexual habits. So finding somebody who's working with that Venus-Uranus energy in a positive way, they're aware of it, they've worked through it, and they're not going to be so commitment phobic, I think is definitely the key. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Julie. I have Venus conjunct Uranus too, so I know what that's like. All right, so we've got Carly, Danielle, and then Robin. What's up, Carly? I have got you here August 28th, 1998. Carly says, 10:46 a.m. in San Bernardino. My main focus is whether I should make a job switch. I have an unexpected offer from my last job to return. However, my ex-boyfriend is the manager there. At my current job, I'm 100% remote, and I felt lonely, bored, and isolated, and like I have zero routine. Not sure what to do. More context, started my first job February 23, started dating partner May of 23, left for current job July of 24, broke up with partner October of 24, received offer 3/18, start date would be 4/14. My current job doesn't feel like it's great for my mental health, but I feel like it's not good for my mental health. And it's not great for daily structure. I don't know if it would be more bothered to be around my ex who's dating another girl in the office. Thanks. Well, this is pretty on par with Scorpio rising. It's kind of funny. It's funny, but it's not funny, you know? So here's the deal. As a Scorpio rising, solar eclipse is saying there's a new potential job offer, right? So it's like a new beginning in the 6th house. You could go to work, you could start something new. Mercury retrograde, hey, that new thing could be you have a new routine, you have a new schedule, you got a new, office that you're going back to. Oh, and by the way, Venus retrograde, it's also going to be about dealing with an ex as Venus drops back into your 5th house. And it's like, well, am I going to be able to be happy and productive if I'm around my ex all the time? Sorry, I just have to laugh. Since the summer, Mars has been retrograde in, not retrograde, but since the end of 2024, Mars has been retrograde in your career zone. So you were already rethinking changing your job, especially as Mars went retrograde over your Mars at a 5, which also would have said, hey, you're going to go back to your old job and it's going to be around your old boyfriend. 5. Now that's all opposing Pluto, where it's almost like, okay, it's tempting to make a change and maybe go back to something I used to do, especially if it gets me out of the house, but at what cost? The only issue that I have is that when Mars goes back into Leo here pretty soon, it's going to start coming into an opposition with Pluto. So yes, you're going to be out of the house, but it's going to start squaring Saturn in the 7th house, which means there could definitely be some communication, tension, and issues happening with another person right around, let's say, mid to the 2nd half of April. Now that's quick moving, but down the line, you're going to have a Mercury retrograde in your 10th. And that means you're going to be going back and forth about a job, deciding whether or not you want to stay. And Mercury is going to be about whether or not you're getting along with a team and if there's like any weird tension. Like I look at this and I'm like, you could go back, you might be there for a couple months and then be like, man, is this really what I wanted to do? That's my thought. Equally, for the next 2 years, and it won't really pick up until 2026, but Pluto is going to start opposing your Mars. And I'm reading this, ex and his new girlfriend are also in my apartment complex. Girl, that is too close for home. I feel like Pluto opposing Mars makes me feel like you're going to go next year, like, I don't want to work or live near exes, ex-boyfriends. Opposition in the home and at work, and then the square to Saturn. Like, it could be too much togetherness. It really depends. What's your ex's birthday? Do you know? I'm hoping I can get into a master's program this fall so I can quit soon. Okay, that's a possibility. The sun rules your career, so considering the fact that you are going to see the South Node come up on your sun, let's say you stay there, right? Let's say you, out of whatever reason, let's say you stay there. By the time the South Node is coming into conjunction with your sun, I don't think you will stay at that job. That's spring of 2026, especially as Mars and Saturn is kind of going into your 6th house. That's like worst case scenario, right? Libra rising, Gemini moon. What a nightmare for Libra rising. That's the Venus retrograde into his 6th house. It's like, oh, my ex is coming back to work. It's quite literal. I'm so glad I'm a Libra rising that works for myself. All right, so you have got his sun and his Venus in your 8th house. So Saturn, he's your Saturn. Saturn is in your 6th, and solar eclipse retrogrades there. I mean, could you deal with it? Yeah, I do feel like even Mars going through his 10th house as a Libra rising, square Chiron, is like him being like, oh man, like now I'm about to, be working with her. Is there going to be some tension? And he might be kind of questioning whether or not that's going to be an issue between you and him. I think he might be thinking the same thing. Also, his Mercury, Mars in opposition to your moon. I mean, I'm sure you know that you guys don't really communicate all that well, or there can be a sense of not feeling like he's very attentive or like understanding maybe emotionally to some of your stuff. But when it comes to work, I mean, his Saturn trines your Mars. So he may be able to be like, look, you know, we have to work together, especially if this is in his 7th. Like, let's just make this work. Let's work through it. It's possible there could be some tension over the summertime, knowing that Mercury is going to go retrograde in Leo in his 11th, that it could mean it's like whether or not the girlfriend has a problem with the fact that you're working there. But do I think the problem is necessarily going to be with him? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. He's past his Uranus transits, so he's not as argumentative. Jupiter's on his ascendant, on his sun. So that's why there's somebody kind of coming back from the past who he used to work with. I just would say I wouldn't stay there very long. You're either going to try to get out at the end of the summer, or you're going to be trying to get out the spring of next year. And sometimes it's not A or B. I know you're looking at it as like, well, I've got this remote job and it's not good for me and I don't have routine. And then also, you know, I've got this other opportunity, but that's not the only opportunity. You know, you could do what all the Scorpio risings are doing, whether they work for themselves remotely or they work in an office. This is about having to learn how to get along with people at work. And if you don't work with people, then it's going to be about being like, I need to take it upon myself to create a routine. And Aries is fitness. So it's like you saying, I'm holding myself accountable. So you may have to check in for your remote job at a certain time and check out. But, you know, are you making time to prep your meals? Are you ensuring that you're going to the gym? Are you making time also for dating and socializing? Are you keeping a schedule and getting up and going to bed at the same time? I mean, all Scorpio risings have to do this. It does not matter who you are. It's all about productivity and whether or not you're going to hold yourself accountable. Personally, I can see the conflict because, you know, this solar eclipse, it's ruled by Mars. Mars is in your 9th, which means you're like, my schedule's got to change, or I'm going to school, you know, or school's impacting my schedule, or my work's impacting my school. Like, you need to have a really strong moon transit for that to happen. It does look like, you know, Mercury and Mars are going to come into contact with your moon. It would be best for you when Jupiter's in your 9th, and right after the new moon in June, that you are either applying or preparing to go back to school. Because this is going to trine your moon and it's going to trine Saturn, I do feel like it's actually a time where you may be going back to school. Why add more pressure to the situation and make yourself feel like you have to go back to an old job just so you can socialize if you're going to be socializing with people you don't want to socialize and they already live near you? Like, that sounds horrible. That's Pluto in opposition to Mars square Saturn. Best case scenario is I would actually hold myself accountable and create a routine. I would be like, I'm up at this time and I'm eating at this time and I'm going out on this day and I'm working out at this time. And like, I know you don't want to do it, but you're going to have to do it. And if you do it, it's going to actually have some really positive psychological effects with the sextile to Uranus. It's also going to help you kind of clean up, be more emotionally resilient, and get your home in order. And when you see the fall, when planets are actually going through Scorpio, trining Jupiter, you could be back in school, you know, September, October, you know. In theory, yes, having to physically show up at a place, but I don't actually feel like that's going to be the best, because I can see you're going to get to about July, and cool, if you want to go and take a job for 3 months, you can totally do that. But you're going to get to about July, and then you're either going to have issues, I think, with her, or there's going to be issues working as a team and whether or not you're getting on well with the people that you're working with, and you're going to be back in the same boat. That's what I think. So knowing that you're having these retrogrades, it's basically saying think twice before you go into this experience. Really make sure that this is where you want to be and that this is going to be good for you, because it may be more social, but I don't think it's going to be best for you in the long run. You're going into a 4th house year too, so that's the other thing, you know. So when your birthday comes through this summer, it's all going to be about Saturn, and it is going to be about being like, okay, next situation is going to be about possibly moving. So at some point within the next year, either they're going to move or you're going to move if Saturn is in your 7th square Mars. I almost wonder if like working together would perpetuate that, and either you or they would be like, we're moving out, this is too much togetherness. Would these tensions show up in my current remote job? Yes, in a way. I mean, I feel like it would be better to be remote. I know, I mean, I understand, I get it. But I look at this and I'm like, Saturn and Neptune is very, I'm on my own working, and at least I can imagine or create my own schedule and do something about it. Versus, I feel like some of the other transits that are going into the 5th house, I feel like it's not just about being productive and holding yourself accountable. It's also like, are you making time to have hobbies? The 5th house is hobbies. It's going to be about dating. This is going to be about, you know, finding times to do things that you like really love and that you enjoy. So I would do it myself. That's just me, because I can see that you have about a 3-month mark and then you're going to possibly be wanting out. And look, if you don't want to work for yourself or do something remotely, hit the ground running. Use the solar eclipse to go looking for another job. Try to find something else that's maybe hybrid, where you can go into work and do some work at home, or something that you could show up and be at another office. But I wouldn't go back during these retrogrades if this were me. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely get a planner. Somebody who's just coming out of Saturn Neptune in my 6th house, you have to have a planner. You have to have a to-do list. You have to be writing down goals, and Saturn wants you to be consistent. So whether you're getting a pet, you're getting plants, you know, you're getting a gym membership, it has to be something that you're like, I do it this time every day, or every so many days, or twice a week. Like, you have to do that. And fitness is a great option with Aries. Good luck, Carly. All right, we got Danielle, Robin, and then Amanda. What's up, Danielle? Danielle. She says, Eclipse reading. Hi, Candace. I've been dragging these first 3 months of the year. When is love going to come back to my life? The person I miss seems long gone. The Libra, I never heard from him. 5/1/81 at 9:23 a.m. Well, dragging makes sense. You've been dragging because Mars has been retrograde in your sign. I've heard this from so many Cancer risings, whether they're like, I'm having health issues, or I can't stop sleeping, or, you know, I'm kind of dealing with frustration, or I just kind of want to be alone. That has definitely been part of it. And the other part of it is also the fact that these retrogrades, the shadows that kind of started over this last month, have all been hitting your moon, which is your chart ruler. So even though Mercury hit that, and that's time to be more communicative, maybe assertive, even though, you know, we've also seen Venus hit that, which can also be a positive time for your work and your reputation, they were slowing down. So having retrogrades coming over your chart ruler, retrogrades in the 1st house, is like, it feels like you're going through like cement. I've spoken to a number of Cancer rising Aries moons, and everybody's kind of told me the same thing. Pretty potent in your chart, girl. Those are now oppositions to Jupiter and Saturn, which means there is a lot of reevaluating the past home, family, relationship, emotional situations, and kind of feeling like something is at a standstill now that you're coming into your Saturn opposition. So if you look at your chart, you know, you're born in 81, so you have Saturn exalted in Libra, which is strong. It is retrograde, so there's a lot of reassessing the past and reassessing old relationships and the wisdom that has come from your experiences, conjunct Jupiter. Now, your moon opposes that, so you're no stranger to being like, I go through periods of my life that are very relationship-oriented, and then periods where I'm alone, and then periods where I'm very career-focused, and as you're coming into your Saturn opposition, you know, what you're going to experience for the next year and a half is now going to be this complete reassessment, and you're going to be going, okay, what have I learned since my Saturn return? And Saturn in the 4th house is emotionally resilient, learning to build its own foundation, the relationship with family, with your home. And Jupiter conjunct Saturn is like maybe where there's been some hard lessons in relationships, and also realizing what is and is not healthy, or what does and does not work. So Saturn opposing this now is basically, all right, since the last time you had your Saturn return 14-ish years ago, now you're asking yourself, have I been living in my Saturn? Have I been doing things wisely? Or have I been prioritizing relationships of the past, Saturn and Libra, too much? Has there been a sense of being too heavily focused on, you know, who I've been with, where I've been, how they feel, what didn't work, what ended, and is it now going to be about focusing on 10th house Aries stuff, what I can achieve, what I am doing, what I am making happen, what I'm being assertive. You know, this is about being in charge and getting in like the driver's seat rather than feeling like you're waiting for other people to make that decision. I think it's nice that it's going to be sextiling Pluto in the South Node because it could represent some huge emotional and psychological shifts, which can totally renew your finances and also like your intimacy sector. And we need to see something really strong happen with either transit Saturn or natal Saturn for a relationship to manifest. So knowing that Mercury and Venus are retrograde over Saturn, sure, a lot of Cancer risings are like, you know, is there somebody out there for me? Am I going to meet someone? What are my beliefs on relationships? Is somebody going to come back? Listen, traveling, education, anything that's going to be about spiritual growth or philosophy, meditations on love, authors on love, people who are going to be talking about self-love and healing and opening yourself up to something new. Long distance relationship opportunities also can happen here, especially if you have Saturn in opposition to the moon. But Venus is dancing with Saturn. So just traveling somewhere or somebody is traveling and you meet them can definitely happen throughout the next month. But the long and short of it is that you got a pretty significant Saturn transit coming. You're going to see in 2026, Saturn's going to hit your moon, which can be about the merger of you and another person in a much more defined way. But I think it's being seeded off the back of this solar eclipse in Aries that we're about to have tomorrow. Setting those intentions. This is the eclipse that's been the closest so far to your moon. We had one at 29 in 2023, one at 19 in 2024, and now we have one at 9. So it's within 6 degrees. And I would not underestimate the effects of this eclipse. Knowing that Saturn's going to hit that next year, the likelihood is around this time next year, you will be in a relationship. Does it mean you have to wait that long? No, not necessarily, but it means that through the solar eclipse and the retrogrades, you're taking a I'm in charge, I'm going after what I want approach. People from the past is going to be more relating to the 4th house. So certainly, you know, can people come back when you have transits to the 4th house? Sure. You'll have Mars go through there over the summer. You're going to have, you know, Mercury go through there also around August and September. But next year, being with somebody from the past is going to be really challenging because you're going to be a completely different person and there's going to be this new identity that's going to emerge that's a lot more action-packed and more dynamic. Relationship and dating stuff can get really good in the fall, especially when you start to see Mars heading into your 5th house in Scorpio, and it'll start trining Jupiter, it'll start trining Mars. I kind of feel like the end of September, really through what appears to be January, is going to be peak period, and then that's leading you into the beginning of next year when Saturn hits your moon, and you could have a very serious conversation in the beginning of 2026. It's like, look, are we doing this or what? If we are, then we're really walking away from the past, or we're talking about our future, or maybe we're meeting each other's families, or we're talking about living together. You know, something like that's going to happen. All the while, Pluto is hitting a 5 on your South Node, so it's about finally being like, okay, whatever I've had in the past, I'm letting them go. I know because you have Saturn in your 4th house, you do have a habit of people eventually coming around, like people coming back. Like you may have had some relationships where it's like, okay, it ends, but you look at that person and you're like, I know I'm going to see them again in like 3 years, you know, or they're going to be back. And usually with the moon in opposition to this, it means that once you no longer care and you have really moved on with your life, or, you know, you're doing you or you met someone else, yes, they'll be back. So, you know, rather than waiting and being like, okay, Jupiter and Saturn and Libra is like, I'm going to show them that I've waited for them all this time. You're going to go, I'm not waiting for anybody. If they come around, they come around. But like now it's on my time. Actually moving forward and opening the door to other potential partners, I think is going to be super key in making it possible for somebody else to kind of come in and show you the polarity and the difference between what you've had and what you could have in the future. But things are going to start getting, I think, good in the fall. Set those intentions now with eclipses around Saturn and your moon, that if that's what you want, if you want something significant, you can have it. Look at the next eclipse that's going to happen in the fall. Look at this. It is going to be in, that's next year. It's going to be in Pisces, and it's going to trine Jupiter. I feel like for a lot of Cancer and Cancer risings, you guys are going to be traveling, meeting somebody, going on a trip with a partner, going to a wedding, going to a birthday party, a graduation. Something's going to happen. And you're going to start to see the turning point that's going to happen as early as September. So, you know, plant the seeds now. Focus on some of the changes that are going on with being more assertive and also being more direct and going after what you want. Really exercising that over the summer, so as you get into the fall, you're going to have a much more, I think, better chance at being able to kind of be real with people and be seeing what else is out there. And if that guy eventually comes back, which he might, especially with like the full moon in Libra, especially when you start seeing transits going through Libra in the fall, they can come back. But I think you're going to be in a different place when that eventually happens. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Danielle. We've got Robin. And I did not have your info, Robin. It just says tonight's eclipse reading. So I wasn't sure if you were the one who was maybe or not. Because it said I sent payment, but I don't know who that is because your name is probably different on YouTube versus on PayPal. So is Robin here? Robin here? Robin here? Robin. I don't want to do the reading unless I know. So if I don't have your info, I'll have to refund you. I'm going to move on to Amanda and Fiorella, but we're going to see if we'll see if Robin's here. So I'm going to take Amanda and Fiorella, but Robin, if you're here, please send your birth info for me. All right, so Amanda's 1-285. And we're also looking at Will. All right, so let's take a look here. So Amanda's January 2nd, 85, Virgo rising, 29, Sun in Capricorn, Moon in Taurus, Earth Mama. All right, so Amanda says, can you pull our charts and see what the stars have in store for me for this potential new relationship? Insights have always been mindful. Your readings are always accurate and informative. All right, so Will is 6/27/83. So one thing I'll say just quickly, just talking about your chart, and then I'll talk about your guys' chart together, is right now you have some pretty significant things happening in your 7th house. We've talked about how you have a critical rising sign, and that means a really significant turning point revolving around your own personal kind of health, habits, identity, and others. And 29 degrees of the zodiac is like the most mysterious when it's in Pisces, the most confusing, the most cloudedness, but also it could be the most romantic, the most spiritual, right? Something that is like, oh my God, it's so glitzy and glamoury, like it's just amazing. So we need to be aware that there can be things that can be skewed, or we can almost have like rose-colored glasses when we're looking at relationships, especially while Neptune and Saturn are coming up in your 7th house. You're about to see what relationships are really made of. And for some Virgo risings going through this transit, you're going to see partners that are going to vanish. For other Virgo risings, you're going to start to see that there is this really significant romantic period and something is blossoming. You just have to wait for the planets to go direct to make sure that it's solid and it's real. And nothing is really fully solid in this chart until, the end of April going into mid-May, when the Venus-Mercury retrograde is done and planets are coming out of shadow. One thing you want to watch for with Saturn and Neptune here is it can mean that, we're falling in love with illusions or we're falling in love with potential, but there can be this sense of somebody still being cautious or sensitive or shying away or not wanting to be totally transparent or totally vulnerable. So I would say this to any late degree Virgo rising, early degree Libra rising, that you just need to be mindful of your interactions with other people as these transits are kind of taking place. Now, the other thing to think about is like the North Node is there. So it is saying, hey, we got to get involved in relationships. And Mercury wants you to reassess or go a little bit deeper into a relationship. And the 7th house is me, your astrologer. So you're like, can you give me insight? And coming back through the retrograde. This could also be about a therapist or a one-on-one relationship or a client. So it's not limited to just romantic relationships. Obviously, Jupiter rules your 7th. So knowing that you're getting ready to have your Jupiter opposition this year could mean that there is a definitive turning point, not only in your career, but your status when it comes to, who you are out in the world or how you're identifying now in relationships or partnerships. And that could mean you're talking about more serious dynamics, commitment, home, or, kind of family change stuff that could potentially be happening as well. Really give this until at least the beginning of May to really let the dust settle and see what happens and see what's kind of changing with your potential partner. Especially also knowing that you've got Uranus that's still on your north node and your moon. Your intuition should be really strong. It's sextiling all of this, so you have to pay attention if there's like alarm bells and things that are going off about relationships and relationship security, and if you're kind of, seeing things eye to eye, I guess I should say. All right, putting their chart with yours and looking at what's going on with Will, obviously we've looked at the synastry, his moon's on your ascendant. He's also got his Saturn very close to your IC, so the theme of like commitment and home and family related themes are definitely going to come up. Mars is connected to your 7th house of relationships and partnerships, and then he's got Juno, Chiron, and the Sun on your midheaven. So he's got planets all along the angles in your chart, girl. So he definitely has big impacts in these particular areas. And while the moon ascendant feels good, the sun on the midheaven can be somebody that's hard to kind of detach from, or you kind of feel like it's hard to get out from underneath like their kind of gravitational pull. And Saturn on the IC can feel like there is some kind of heavy karmic responsibility in regards to like home and family dynamics. And that squares your ascendant, opposes your midheaven. I mean, like, my goodness. I mean, his involvement or his kind of connection to you has a huge, huge pull in your chart. Anyway, flipping it around and looking at what's going on with him, he's a Sag rising. Obviously, Jupiter is in the 7th house, and it's going to be hitting his Venus, his Mercury, and his Chiron, and his Juno. So this is a turning point where it's like, it's actually supposed to be a huge glow up in a relationship. It could mean that now he's more open to talking about 7th house things like marriage, partnership, long-term commitment. Equally, it is squaring his north and his south node, which means he needs to make a conscious decision to get out of the past with these planets retrograde, commit to a future, and move forward. I have another client that has a chart very similar to this. Born, I think, probably within a day or two of when Will was born. And one thing that I have found that's really interesting is talking to them is they're always telling me like, oh my God, like I really want a relationship. I really want a partner. And then somebody will come along and she's like, yeah, I just don't know if like that's it. She can become super hyper-focused in either what has happened in past relationships or what other people are doing. And I'm not saying he's doing that, but that's the energy of, okay, retrogrades in the 7th, you can move forward. Somebody is here who can partner with you now. Do you want to be less selfish or give up some of your freedom? And also, are you willing to get out of the past? Are you willing to be more open and like moving forward? So he's got both Saturn and retrogrades in his 4th house, where he's still needing to kind of deal with a past issue or a home or family matter. And Jupiter is like you, the cheerleader that's like, come on, let's move forward into the future. Let's do this thing. And Jupiter is going to obviously hit his Juno, his Chiron, and his Sun. So really, this is a year that's more about vulnerability and coming together with another person. And eclipses in the 4th house and the 5th house are definitely changing matters of the heart and also the home. So, it's been more difficult, I think, in recent years, having Saturn on top of the North Node and Mars squaring all this stuff. Now it's going to start to move away, but he's in his Saturn square. So it's like, if he has been too reluctant to change, if he's been too focused on all this Sag energy, which, Sagittarius risings are inherently like the bachelors of the zodiac, right? Like, they don't realize it, but they want that freedom. And he's always kind of either had relationships at a distance or things that haven't quite worked out or whatever, because it's given him that freedom. Now he has to decide, has he become so focused on that it's actually hindering him from doing 4th, 5th house things, living with somebody, having a kid, getting married, whatever. So he's got some really unusual astrology. Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde. I mean, oppositions to Saturn and Uranus. There's always like this back and forth that's going on with relationships, But things are actually kind of on the mend. Things are actually starting to kind of improve. And you'll see for him with this solar eclipse, it can really open up his heart space. And lunar eclipses in the 4th house can open up the home. And it can be about kind of figuring out like a foundation. So, then you put these things together. Obviously, there's a bunch of different techniques that I use, but for the sake of time, we're going to look at the midpoint. Scorpio rising, Sun in Aries, all right? And then the moon is in Leo. So look at what's going on right now. look at what's happening. You have got the chart ruler, Mars, retrograde in the 9th. Okay, what is our purpose? What are we doing? How do we come together? You have got retrogrades in the 5th house, which can be, okay, are we really in love? You know, what are we doing? What are we creating together? How can we have more romance? How can we have more fun? Are we talking about having kids? Or romanticizing, you know, where we could go, what we could do. And then you're about to have a solar eclipse that's going to be conjunct your sun in the 5th. And Mercury and all these planets are retrograding over it. So there is this sense that's like, if we are going to do these things, when do we do them? How do we do them? Aries. What is the sequence? What is the action plan? You know, where do we need to be living? What do we want to do before we decide to do any of these things? What are our roles going to be in any of this like life stuff? And this is really interesting because Pluto's in opposition to the moon. So it could mean home and family changes. It could mean career changes. You know, you guys are yet to have another eclipse in your 5th, which I feel like is a pretty significant turning point romantically. And it could be a pregnancy in September because it's going to be conjunction to Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter. Or traveling, or maybe talking about getting engaged. And then next year, Saturn's going to come up on your sun, and that's going to test the relationship. And then you're going to see it come up into your 6th house, and it's going to be like, you know, okay, have we worked through the things that we need to work through so we can be fully functional in this relationship? So this year is the preparatory phase. And maybe with the North Node conjunct Jupiter and Mercury and Mars, this is about being romantic and idealistic and kind of creative about what kind of a life you guys can create together. Right? If you have that many planets in the 5th house, you need to have fun. You need to create something. And if it's not a family or a business, or if it's a hobby or it's art, it's got to be, you got to create something. You got to nurture something, Pisces. So it could be that you guys are like, hey, let's get a dog or let's get a pet. You got retrogrades in the 6th house. Well, let's make more time for date nights. You know, that seems to be the focus right now. But next year, things get real. And I wonder what the dynamic is with Pluto in opposition to your moon. If you guys are talking about moving or changing, or somebody's going through a work change or a career change, that seems to be part of this also. But yeah, solar eclipse on your sun at a 7, and the eclipse is at a 9. So it's definitely about making more time to kind of enjoying the finer things in life and really making an effort for more romance and dreaming about the future. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Amanda. I've got Fiorella, Alyssa, and Tara. I'm going to keep throwing it out there. Robin. If you were there, let me know. If I do not hear from you, I'm going to refund you because I do not have your birth information. And if you put it in the chat, which I have a feeling you did not tell me what your name was. So, all right. So we're going to move on to Fiorella. What's up, girl? Let's take a look at your chart. So we've got Libra rising, sun in Libra, moon in Virgo. She says, what exciting things should I expect the next few months? October 3rd, 94 in Puerto Rico at 6:30. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned 6 months. So obviously that's a great deal of time, but I would like to start with what's being seeded in the next 24 hours, which is going to play out over 6 months, okay? Probably the biggest thing is that you've got a solar eclipse that's in opposition to your sun. So you've had other solar eclipses, okay? So think about 2023, think about 2024. Having had solar eclipses in your 7th house means that there was something that was going on with relationships. And the funny thing, which is not funny, is the first one in 2023 was 29 degrees. So it felt critical and like there was like a crisis. And that was actually squaring your Mars. So it could have brought up relational issues or work problems. The second eclipse that you had was at 19. This was last year, conjunct Chiron with a retrograde. So it could have brought a breakup, healing a relationship wound, realizing that you really wanted someone, something not working out with someone. And now we have this one. Yeah, I feel you. As a Libra rising, all of the solar eclipses in Aries have been horrible. So I am trying to be optimistic, especially knowing that this one that's coming in is at a 9. It is not close to Chiron. And the only thing that's really challenging about this moon is that the ruler is Mars and it's squaring Chiron. So it's saying where there's new opportunities coming up in relationships for you, which is really saying that you're having to be more assertive with relationships or partners about what it is that you want. And that could be career-wise, life-wise, if you need more support and maturity from them. In a business sense, it creates a lot of competition where it's almost like there's this competitive nature going on with somebody at work or with a boss or something. But to neutralize that, you want to look at Mars trine Venus, your chart ruler, and trining the North Node in Saturn, which means you're really committed to hard work, dedication, clearing some kind of blockage, work issues, health issues, and you're just, not allowing relationships to impact your professional life anymore of any kind. So a solar eclipse plants a seed, and this solar eclipse is in opposition to your sun. So it's about as relational as it gets, and it's at a 9. So this means that there can be more optimism, there can be more growth, there can be more opportunity that can be coming in through relationships. You could meet somebody within weeks or months of this particular eclipse. You might actually see something materializing where it's like, okay, you can take a lot, but you're also going to go, let's try to work through this. Let's hash it out. Let's find peace, or trying to find ways to be able to support other people at work or make amends with people at work so there is less conflict, basically, right? The other thing that I would say is that, this is going to take some time to play out. So this is a solar eclipse. It's going to take, several weeks to several months. So you're going to have the next full moon in Libra in your sign on the 12th, which will oppose the sun and Chiron. I see this as more kind of like realizing like, you know what? Venus conjunct Saturn. I've done the best that I can to try to make amends with someone or something, or to try to find a relationship or build a partnership. And I can only do so much. And if this is not healthy for me, this is when you're going to kind of reach like your limit, basically. Then what you're going to see after this is in 6 months, then it's going to become a full moon. So boom, this becomes a full moon in Aries, right on your descendant around early October on the 6th. This is ruled obviously by Mars, and Mars is conjunct Juno, planet of marriage. I think what you're going to have by about the fall of this year is you're going to have somebody saying, I want to commit to you. I want to be with you. I want to be committed to you. I want to work with you. I want to build with you. Like something like that's going to happen basically, because that's what Juno is about. And also you're going to see at this time now, Jupiter is in your 10th house where there's growth in the career, and it's trining Saturn. So having hashed out some of the issues maybe with people at work, it's a good thing. You're able to kind of squash it. What I don't think you're going to like is that Venus is going through the South Node in your 12th house. So there is this feeling of being like, I have to be willing to give someone or something up if it's not best for me. She says there's a lot of competition at work, someone in February out of the blue. Okay. So if you're in a relationship, or if you met somebody, they could have come through during the retrogrades. Venus retrograde in the 7th can bring somebody in for single. Solar eclipse can bring somebody in. Mercury can bring somebody in. We just want to wait till we get till mid-May to have a better understanding of where we stand. And when you have a really strong transit to your Mars, which by the way is at a critical degree, that's when you're going to see some kind of significant turning point and commitment. So what you have to look forward to this year is that Saturn in your 6th house is going to trine. So you can make more time for dating. You can be in a more public relationship. You can also kind of heal some of the wounds of people at work, and you can find ways to work through some of the competition, some of the conflict. And next year, you're going to have Jupiter come up on your Mars. So that's going to be an even more significant turning point when Jupiter's on your Mars, and that can mean there's a new status emerging, like living with somebody, moving in, getting engaged, starting a business, and Saturn's in your 7th. So you'll want to wait until you see that transit for it to fully manifest. But prior to that, some nice transits. Venus is still trining your Pluto. Excuse me, Saturn is still trining your Pluto. I think the only thing that's challenging is maybe that Pluto is squaring your Mercury, and there's going to be some communication issues with romantic partners, maybe kind of having conversations that's like, talking about children. Pluto's in your whole sign 5th. Being like, well, do I want to have kids? Do we want to live together? What are you looking for? What am I looking for? And it will bring up uncomfortable conversations because Mercury is conversation, Scorpio is about merging, and Pluto in the 5th is matters of the heart. So I think that you will inevitably be having some of these chats. Even if you're not doing it now, you're going to start feeling this come up probably as early as Mars in Scorpio. So end of September. And then it's going to be coming up again, and that's going to be January, February, March 2026, leading the way to Saturn going into your 7th house. So work with this solar eclipse. It's setting the stage for, maybe having more clarity around this person that you've met and seeing how things kind of unfold over the next couple of months. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I'm just seeing what you saw, Amanda. We broke up because we could never get on the same page. I needed a plan and you can never give me one. All right, well, thank you for your feedback. We've got Alyssa and then Tara. Alyssa's March 20th, 1991. What's up, Alyssa? All right. Hey, Candace. Excited for another reading. Hoping to break outdated money love patterns for good. How do I best harness the energy for optimum healing in these areas? Finishing this chapter of Chiron return, the final square before the full return, and Pluto on my Saturn as a part of my natal T-square. South Node also getting lit up. Been dealing with some deep shit. Any help is greatly appreciated. I got you. Wow, yeah, I would say your chart is getting lit up like a Christmas tree. Holy cow. This is crazy. Wow, wow, wow. I don't even know where to begin. Obviously, being a Leo rising, you know, you got to look at solar eclipses, transits on your sun, right? So you know that you have this critical degree sun where Neptune's on it. So you're like, what is life? Why am I here? What am I doing? And it's the ending of one cycle, the beginning of the new. It also probably feels like a bit of like an ego death. And kind of swimming in the cosmic soup. It is in your ninth house, so it is about making some changes in regards to your philosophy and your belief system about the world, but also feeling like called to explore different places, different things, different belief systems, different practices. Obviously, you've got Mercury retrograde over there, so there's a lot of needing to be alone. You've got Venus retrograde over there, so there's a lot of reassessing where you want to live and the kind of life you want to live, and also how to better kind of communicate and express things. So it goes without being said, until these planets are off of your sun, so that's going to be closer to like May, it's going to feel very, very emotional. Point blank. I'm not going to candy coat it. The other thing that's been going on is Mars has been retrograde over your South Node. So that's also been a period of retreat, clearing the decks karmically, clearing out some kind of ancestral blockages, emotional blockages, healing and needing to be alone, right? All right. When Mars started its retrograde, it was right on your ascendant, conjunct Jupiter, which means you were probably like, I need to go through a change, or I'm processing something, I'm healing something, I'm going through this rebirth period. Maybe you felt called to travel or study. And it was in opposition to transit Pluto, which meant that you were trying to navigate some kind of change while you were dealing with other people who were unwilling to change. And you were finding it difficult to interact with them or come together or partner with them. And simultaneously, Jupiter and Pluto are in opposition, so it's communication issues. And Mars has been in opposition to Saturn while Pluto was showing up. Oh my God. This is definitely one of the more difficult charts I've seen in a long time, transit-wise. It's just the transits are really kicking your ass right now. That's what's going on. You take it a step further, while Pluto is in your 7th house of relationships, bringing up some deep-seated issues in partners or maybe friends or maybe even, support systems, it's squaring your Venus. So that's also saying through the change that's going on with some of your friends or like maybe your relationships, it's also putting pressure on your finances, your career, your professional image. And you're like, wow, relationships are changing, jobs changing. Like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And I really just kind of like need to heal or I need to hide. And then the finale is that you have had Uranus in opposition to Pluto, which is over. And that's a pretty traumatic transit, and Uranus is on your moon where you just feel like you just want to crawl out of your skin, which is also activating your 12th house. Like I look at this and I'm like, man, it would have been such a good time to be like, I'm just going to go and work remotely for 6 months, or I'm going to go pack up and do a stint, like literally in a foreign country, or I'm going to go and like work at a, some kind of not resort, but a retreat center, or like be in nature. Like this has me thinking that without some kind of connection to nature or water or privacy, you just kind of like lose it. And you're going to feel interference professionally as well as in relationships, no matter what you do, right? Definitely been wanting to isolate a lot, reintegrating scattered energy, healing a lot of wounds, good. Keeping me grifty, everything's up for renegotiation. I've been taking salt baths and writing a lot of music, good. This will pass. That's the good thing. Uranus is going to be on your moon for a little bit. It can be great for intuitive stuff. It can be great for astrology groups. It can be great for meeting new artistic partners. It can be great for meeting other artists. Saturn and Neptune on your sun is sad, but it's like, it's like making lemonade. What are you going to make with that? Right? And that's also collectively a Saturn, Neptune in the North Node are there. It's like, you might be able to write something or publish something or create an album or write a book or some poetry, something that is going to encapsulate what the collective is feeling, which you could release to the world, and that could be your contribution. But all of these transits are over at the beginning of this next year. And I know we're only like a third of the way through, but Saturn and Neptune will be off your sun. Pluto will no longer be squaring your Venus. Uranus is going to be off of your moon. You're not going to have Pluto continuing to oppose Jupiter. It'll hit Saturn. And I think a lot of this is about needing, instead of waiting to see if friends or allies or partners are going to come around and if they're going to change, there's a lot of you being like, no, I'm not waiting for that anymore. And I'm also not going to kind of fall victim to, you know, some of the haphazard kind of behaviors and actions by other people. So you're in a cosmic pressure cooker, basically. But it's definitely going to lessen. I would just watch, you know, in the end of April, Mars will oppose Pluto again. You're going to see some tension. You're also about to see Saturn come up on your sun, which is a really big transit because the sun is your chart ruler. And so when Saturn hits that, you might meet somebody who's culturally diverse. You might go on a trip. You might, you know, be able to publish something. There might be a really prominent teacher that comes into your life, spiritual teacher, hypnosis teacher, somebody who teaches yoga or anything kind of connected to like metaphysics. And it might mean that you feel like you're called to, either publish or like get a certification or do some kind of training. Travel, that might be something else that kind of comes up for you as well, if you can swing it. But my goodness, by the time Uranus is off of your moon and Saturn is off of your sun and the Mars-Pluto stuff is over, it's like the pressure starts to actually release in June. And you get a little bit of a reprieve until Saturn's back in September. And then Uranus is also back at the end of the year. And then the true rebirth period is actually going to be spring of 2026 as Jupiter's crossing your ascendant. Saturn's on your midheaven. A huge breakthrough for your career. I mean, I really feel like this is the year that you're taking time to kind of like retreat. As much as I hate to say that. And, you know, it's crazy because you are technically now in your 11th house year, so it should be social. But it doesn't feel very social to me. You know, your ruler is in the 9th. So if anything, you can socialize with people that are at a distance, or you're connecting with people abroad, or maybe you're traveling places, but it's not so social in person all the time. You need a little bit of space, you know? Anyway, I hope that is helpful in kind of giving you some insight. And definitely, yeah, that's a chart that for the first time probably in a while that I'm like, holy shit. Like, I could not imagine going through all of that. So you're tough, but when you come out the other side of so many transits at one time, it's like so incredibly life-changing, and you're just going to realize how much grit you have. And I think that it's going to be really, really big for your career, especially watching Saturn go into your 10th house next year, Jupiter sitting on your ascendant. I think that you're going to get a lot of recognition, and you're also going to have much stronger relationships because of some of the boundaries that you've created with other people. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Alyssa. Is Robin here? Robin, are you here? I'm going to keep trying because I know you're going to be so disappointed if I'm not able to do your reading. So we've got Tara. What's up, Tara? Last call for Robin. I want to make sure I have the right Tara here. Hold on. I think it's this one. 8/15/1980. Yep. Hey. All right, so we've got Tara here. Pisces rising, sun in Leo, moon in Libra. Wow, look at all those transits on your ascendant and in your south node stuff in the 7th. All right, so Tara says, currently in Tucson, what do I do with the Saturn opposition and the current transits at play for the next few months, including in my progress chart? It seems like a game changer. What should I do for work and health? All right, well, in your natal chart, Saturn is continuing to kind of go through Pisces briefly, so it's going to be there until the fall. And you will have Saturn oppose Saturn, so we see this as the kind of karmic reckoning, so you have to go back. Oh, thank you. 8:39. You have to go back and you have to think about what happened literally 14, and a half, almost 15 years ago. Okay, what happened then? Because Saturn in your 7th house means that persistence, sometimes delays, karma, challenges when it comes to 7th house, relationships. Virgo could be their habits. It could be relationships with people you work with. It could be spouses, committed relationships, clients even. Your healthcare practitioners, right? And Virgo is very by the book, practical, logical, getting everything in its place. And what's funny is usually when I see Saturn in the 7th house, I actually kind of feel like, especially in Virgo, it's like other people might have, habits they're dealing with or job changes, or they can be having health problems or things like that. And it's going to be about you deciding what you can and cannot partner with, be around, or tolerate. Okay, so she said, I had a divorce in 2009. Okay, so I think having South Node eclipses in the 7th house, whether you look at it from your Placidus, which looks like there was already issues that were building up before you got into the, transits with the South Node in 2009, that were going through Libra, which were probably either emotional, psychological, or intimacy related issues, even secrets, could have been coming up with those Libra transits. Then it got into Virgo, and then it was like, okay, well, now I can't shy away from this. This is not a healthy relationship dynamic. I have to let this go. And then the South Node hit your Saturn. And Saturn was about goals. So maybe you guys weren't on the same page about goals. Maybe you guys weren't on the same page about children, because obviously, the 11th house could have been your guys' goals or how the other person looked at kids. It could have been other people creating problems in the marriage. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate, but you have to think about that. Now, this time around, if you're married, it can mean that you're just seeing that there's some challenges in your relationships. You can work through them. You can make it through the South Node transits in the 7th and maintain a relationship. You might feel like you're more self-focused and less kind of consumed with their problems, their issues, and you're less wanting to be involved in telling them how to fix things, right? So there's that. This time around, it's different because it's not just the Saturn opposition, it's also the South Node. The South Node was not there last time. And you've got Saturn and Neptune in the 1st house, which means you're going, okay, do I want to be alone or do I want to be with other people? And is being with other people going to be difficult for me when I'm not going to be tolerant of lower vibrational energy, bad habits, somebody who doesn't work or doesn't take care of their health or prioritize themselves? Can I emotionally deal with that? Can I be around it? Do I want to be around it? Do I want to disrupt my peace? That's more what I think you're dealing with than anything. Mercury deals with your relationships. So knowing that Mercury's retrograding too is this huge reassessment where you're asking yourself, could I get into a relationship again? Can I do that? Is it going to work for me? And you're going to go through this again in July when Mercury turns retrograde over your natal Mercury, where you'll be reassessing relationships. So even if you get back into the dating game, there is this sense of you going, okay, well, I'm giving this until about the summer and then I'm going to reassess things. I'm single and back at living at his house due to health. Okay, so the South Node, brings you back to kind of dealing with people from the past. So you're living at whose house? You're living with your ex-spouse? That would be a really funny / unusual way of the South Node kind of playing out. Maybe it's karma. With Mercury ruling partnerships and Mercury and Venus are retrograde on your ascendant with Saturn and Neptune, he owes you a favor. Mercury rules the South Node. You saw him through what was some really difficult times, and now he's saying, you know what, I'm going to be there for you. I'm here to help you. What do you need? Interesting stuff. So he's coming back around in some capacity. Okay, that's fine. I do think that I would be mindful, when Mars is coming into conjunction with Mercury at the end of May, you might feel a little burnt out. And then you're getting into the summer when you're having a Mercury retrograde and South Node Mars conjunct Saturn, where it's you're getting to May to July and there's not as much togetherness, or you're now suddenly wanting some space. And you're going to find that other people might be like, let me help you, or, no, stay here, or let's get back together. And you're like, no, I'm not wanting to do that. I want my space. I want my independence. How do I navigate it? Well, 25 is an Aries degree, so it's going to be about their action, their temperament. It's going to be about also their independence and their willingness to take care of themselves. And I think with Saturn in your first house, you're doing what's best for you, even if it's challenging their independence or their needs this time around. But it's a good thing. It's karmic. He owes you a favor, like I said. Will it be as fun in July? No, not when Mars comes into conjunction with Saturn. It will not. So I would say have a strategy for how long you're planning to be there, what the plan is in terms of getting there, you know, getting better, and then figuring out what the next step is so you don't feel stuck. And you're going to see Saturn, obviously, pretty much out of opposition with your Saturn by about the end of May, right? It's going to go into Aries. And then you're going to see it come back again, and it will oppose again, and that's going to be around October through roundabout, let's say, January. And when that happens, your Saturn, you know, opposition is finished, and then Saturn's going to go into Aries, your whole sign second house, which is more about, okay, I feel good, I'm solid, my health is back, I'm making money, I feel more independent. And you're doing this before you start seeing other kind of Saturn-Mars oppositions that are going to set up where you're like, now I really need my space. And yeah, health. Health is a Leo with Mars retrograde is so important. You're going to go through a Mercury retrograde where maybe you're reassessing if you're getting back on the horse and you're working over the summer. June, July, August might be something that you're going to potentially be doing. And she says, he's never had to miss work. I was always taking care of the kids to help him succeed. I'm trying to reinvent myself, offering healing frequencies. Cool. I love that with Saturn and Neptune in your first house. I think that's great. And also Saturn's trining Uranus. So it's something that's kind of frequency related, healing, and kind of helping other people. Great way to do it. Just really watch your health. I would say, you know, especially going into the summer, pace yourself. And I know that you had asked about how this kind of works with like progressions, but you know, in your progress chart, you actually have Saturn opposed Saturn as well, and it's in the sign of, you know, Libra and Aries. So this is other people, right? Friends, so it can be friends, other people's goals, other people's kids, 11th house, and how it's opposing your Saturn. That might be more like kind of feeling, you know, you do need to be a part of groups or communities. You're needing to start them, connect, collaborate, you know, to show people what you're creating, what you're getting ready to launch. Your personal business can very much be Saturn in the 5th house. And I think especially knowing that like Pluto's on your midheaven in this chart and it's trining your Saturn, it means that you're having to work really hard to get on a schedule, to fix your health, to obviously work with frequencies, you know, also it's about investing money into what can be machines or other things so you can participate in this hobby, which will become a business. And I think that, you know, an exalted Saturn direct in the 5th house is quite great. It's just, this is about probably building an audience or trying to figure out how you can show people what you're doing, or if you join community healing events, or if you decide that you want to go and, you know, maybe volunteer at like a healing center, you know, once a month to show people what you're doing, or if you want to go and do demonstrations, you're gonna have to show people basically what you got going on. And Saturn in this chart is not just connected to work, it's also about teaching and training. So it might be showing people about how the frequencies work and what you do, what your process is, and there could be, you know, demos and stuff like that that maybe you're doing at certain metaphysical fairs or events, right? And needing to be more active, I would say, with other people who are kind of in a similar field. So hopefully that's kind of helpful in giving you some insight. Really excited to see what you do. The moon's going through your 2nd house. So for the next, you know, year and a half, I mean, there's opportunity to make money, especially as it's coming into positive aspects of planets in your 6th and also your south node. So you might feel like you're kind of getting back into the swing of being productive again and trying to heal yourself while also kind of building something that can kind of help heal other people. So definitely really interesting that you have your Saturn opposition both ways at the same time, huh? It's just kind of being presented, I think, in like two very different ways. But for the meantime, I hope that you're doing better with your whole healing process and that things go well. All right, well, guys, that was the solar eclipse readings in Aries. So I hope you guys enjoy this eclipse. The next like 48 hours or so, it's going to be quite active, especially going into Sunday. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, hit the bell button below. I do have a solar eclipse in Aries video that's been out. I talk about what it means for the 12 signs, also in my March horoscopes. I'm also going to be talking all about kind of the aftermath of the shakeout that's going to be happening on Sunday. So make sure you watch Sunday's Astro Weather, where we talk about the Mars in Cancer trining Saturn in Pisces and how it can help stabilize things so we're not getting kind of caught in the Chiron wound. For all of that and more, horoscopes, new and full moon reports, weekly transits, and also teaching astrology, subscribe to the channel, join my memberships, give me a thumbs up if you like my videos, and consider sharing with other Astro friends. Remember, I will be here every Friday for the most part around 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. on the Pacific Coast, 7 p.m. on the Eastern Coast. Always look for me to post that ad on my community tab if you guys want to get a reading in the future. And if you're watching this, we're no longer live. So I'll catch you guys back here on Sunday. I hope you enjoy this eclipse. I hope it's a good one for everybody and that you guys are enthusiastic about where we're going. And I will see you all very soon. Take care.